Okay. Next, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Isabel, you're at the far end. You get to start.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. You've received the agenda. We need to approve the agenda before we continue. Could I get a motion?
I move that the agenda be approved as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. This is strictly an information discussion meeting. We are not planning any vote of any sort for this meeting. That will, if we have votes, those will come at our regular board meeting in September. So the first item on the agenda is taking a look at what possibilities might be out there for our school buildings. So I'm going to let
Yeah.
you take that over.
And these three items are related, really. So we'll kind of introduce each item and maybe have some discussion and questions, and then kind of talk about it as a whole, I'd say. But the first one there is Mile High Middle School. So I'm curious, is it a secret, or have people heard mumblings over the years that people would like to buy Mile High Middle School and develop it for the community as like an entertainment district, or to help the economic situation in the Prescott area? Is that a secret to you all, or has anyone heard mumblings of that over the years?
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say I would guess about 15 years I've been dealing with, as the principal and then as assistant superintendent and superintendent, it comes up. And the idea is that, the community would buy that and develop it, and that we would relocate those kids to Prescott High School, the current Prescott High School. And we've always said, great, because we'd love to build an innovative high school for our students here in Prescott. It's been 50 years since we built a high school, and for many reasons, a lot of people get excited about that concept. So I've probably been in 30 meetings with lots of great people in town trying to figure out how to do that. And so some of the logistics, Mile High has never been approved by the voters to sell. Legally, that must happen first. Like I said, we've always said we've got to find a nice place to build a high school. And that'll come in a second here with the James Foundation and property at Deepwell Ranch. But we have never appraised Mile High, so, we can all guess, and I probably won't do that publicly, on how much money you'd make for that. But it would be nowhere near what a new high school costs. And so everyone get ready for the sticker shock. But the going price for a new high school our size is about $100 million. And so, so you'd obviously have to go to the voters. You'd have to have a bond. And that's how we've built all of our buildings in this town over the years. So that concept's been bouncing around for a long time. And the reason I bring it to your attention today is because probably 5 years ago, the James family approached us. They have been super generous with our schools and our whole community and our hospital and our YMCA. They have pretty much funded all of our Capturing Kids' Hearts programs. But Ron James came to me, Ron and Jenna James came to me 5 years ago and said, we're going to develop this property out here at Deepwell Ranch, and we're setting land aside. We would love to see your new high school out here. And so, again, that was 5 years ago, and they're always great, and they've always been in touch with us. But I met with them recently, and the message was, how's that going? What are you thinking? Because you've all seen what happened at Deepwell Ranch, and it's exploded. And they said, we're still hanging on to that, but we have a lot of pressure to sell it. And so, I kind of got the message like, we'll hang on to it, but we need to know at some point if y'all want to do something with that property or not, because we'll move forward if you're not. And so, that property is 30 acres, and it's right on kind of the new part of Williamson Valley Road, right before you get to the airport. There's a James Road or James Way, and it goes south, and if you wanted to turn north, it stops right there, but that's right about the area where this property is. And current Prescott High School's 24 acres if you don't count the lower fields, okay? 33 acres, current Prescott High School, including the lower fields. And it's been clear for years that that's a pretty small footprint for a high school our size. What we looked at the James property is this 30 acres. Right across the street is a fly zone. So you can't build buildings there, you can't build houses there, but you could build fields there. So we've talked about, well, you could tunnel underneath and put parking lots and a bunch of fields over there. And so it is a nice footprint for a high school property. I've talked informally to architects over the years, but I don't know a lot of details about that at this time. We haven't gotten very deep into any of that. So, should I stop and should we discuss, or would you like to hear more about another conversation with Yavapai College?
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
So, Deb, I'll let you kind of talk about our little tour over there. And I have talked to Yavapai College, and they're comfortable with us talking about this in public.
Okay. Joe and I were invited to go and tour the Yavapai College campus with Lisa Ryan, the president, and Clint Ewell, vice president of the college. And what they are suggesting as a possibility is to put a high school on the Yavapai College property. This could have a variety of different layouts or uses. It would be possible to have the whole thing there where you'd have, say, freshmen and sophomores primarily in a self-contained building and so forth, but then have a lot of classrooms interspersed for juniors and seniors, and also opening the classes at Yavapai College to our students, as we offer now, but it would be right there on campus and so forth. Honestly, one of the things that appeals to me personally about that idea is that I think once kids are comfortable on a college campus, they're more likely to continue to go there, particularly the at-risk kids, the kids that are least likely to go on to school now. And the tech classes would also be open there, so there'd be opportunities there for that. Nothing, firm at all. This was just an opening conversation.
Yeah, lots of opportunities to share facilities.
Yeah.
And, they've got amazing innovative labs and, art complexes and things like that. So what Yavapai College is doing is they're doing a 10-year facility study. They're hiring an architect to lead that and the whole thing. And so after that meeting, they asked us to be a part of that, which we'd be happy to be, and sort of vision what this piece is. I'll tell you what I ran into quick, when I start, I share those ideas with people at the high school and just kind of see what they say. There's space at Yavapai College to build buildings, but there's not space for fields. And what sets us aside from many schools and districts is all of our programs and our fields. A lot of people are attracted to our districts because of those opportunities. And even if it's a drive across town to go to practice, you know, you talk to our athletic director, Missy Townsend, and it's like, that's a deal killer for a lot of people that, you know, you have to get on a bus after school and go somewhere else to practice. So I don't think that's insurmountable. I mean, I think we could be creative about that, but I'll just tell you guys where my weird mind goes. You know, I always go to like, well, we can do it all. Let's build a super high school, you know, out at Deepwell Ranch, and let's have, you could call it magnet or satellite, build a 2-3 story building and call it PHS at Yavapai College. And the other really intriguing thing too is, you know, our legislature just approved community colleges to be 4-year schools. So we could partner with Yavapai College and build a 916 program that's probably specific to certain, you know, degree areas and you know, and using those science facilities and all those other, you could really get into STEM and all kinds of cool stuff over there. So anyway, it's a brainstorm where it's, you know, it's hard to get out of our everyday element and think 10 years down the line. If we were going to, before the economy crashed in 2008, this governing board was ready to build a high school. We had capacity issues, but then what happened was North Point split off from us. North Point was created by us, and then they split off, and that took care of some of that. And then with the economy crashing, people left, and so it just stopped. It wasn't an issue anymore. But I can tell you, when I was the principal at Mile High, that's all the board talked about for years. And it was an interesting community conversation, because it was like, no way, you can't. My kids are going to go to the high school I went to. There was some of that. And then there was also, are you creating a second high school and we're going to have rivals here in town, which I thought would be kind of cool. But that's some of the history about it. But in terms of timing, what I would say is, you know, if starting now, if we had a new high school in 4 years, that'd be close to miraculous. 5 to 7 is probably more likely, and that we should verify that kind of stuff with an architect at some point, because I'm just basing on that, on how I've seen schools built and what I've heard folks say, but I think we could probably get more accurate information on that. But this is not a next year thing, but if we're going to move that direction, and if we want to give the James family some information, we should probably start talking about what options are. And ultimately, we take that to the voters, and it's either a yay or a nay. So I'll leave it at that, and would love to hear ideas, discussion, questions.
Reactions, comments?
I think it's brilliant.
Which? What?
Well, that's true, because I was on a board for the question of, and it was just for the high school. It was a single high school district. And the question was, should we take the land that, we need a new high school for capacity reasons, and that was true at the time. And so, and they didn't have, they owned some land a little further north from where the, you know, mother high school was. And they decided that, you know, the voters had to vote on whether to use the land that they already owned or create a whole new high school. All right, so that's what they did. They created the whole new high school, but they had, that took a while because it involved a lot of committees and commercial places, you know, businesses that were located in that, within that district. The land was in the district, but the original school was never in the district. It's kind of hard to understand, but it turned out really well. I remember a lot of people making, and the board had to decide, you know, what do you think first? And that's what, you know, the decision was made by the board with the assistance of a lot of the teachers, administrators, families of kids who would be going to school there. And that was kind of touch and go. They, you know, they're certainly not as old as this high school, for example, because they just aren't. This is a very old district, so they were a little gun shy about it and what will it cost and will we have enough. Interestingly, though, that high school was named after this happened. It was on equal par with its brother high school at the original site, and only probably about 5 miles away from the land that was owned.
Okay.
So that was not an issue, but there were other things that came up. For one thing, they had a lot more of a tax base than we have here.
Right.
And that was
and
big.
yeah, and I think that's certainly, you know, we'll need at some point to take a look at that. I'm curious, ladies, what, just your gut feelings from what you heard.
Well, I like the idea that Yavapai would be open their facilities, but I do think that I'm curious on how that would affect like the students, because like how you were saying with the sports and everything, that would be a deal breaker for many kids. I know that. I think we have very nice properties, so like as of now, because we get to go outside and it's green. In Deepwell, I'm sure that we'd have to work towards, you know, making the campus look as beautiful as it is now. I don't know. I like the idea of Yavapai.
Okay.
Because I personally don't do any sports, but I think that having it open to all those classes that are offered there, that would make me want to take part in those classes and continue going to Yavapai after.
Okay.
Would that be an either-or situation, Lily? I mean, build or align with Yavapai College? Or both? I mean, what do you think about that? Because they would lose enrollment here.
So what are we
And-
thinking of doing with the campus that's right now? Like what would happen to that campus?
It'd become the middle school. And by the way, I think we could also probably move a lot over there. Everything from the service center, put the service center up for sale. I think we could probably house all that over there with the middle school.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
To move the middle school to Prescott High School.
Would we be, like, it's a huge building for 7-8, would we go back to 5, 6, 7, 8, or?
There might be some opportunities to restructure, or do you use part of that building and put preschool in it? Because we don't have enough room for preschool. We have a waiting list. So I think that would be a fun part of the conversation. I think you could put a lot at Prescott High School, because you're right. It would open a bunch of capacity. Because the middle school's is less than half the size of the high school, enrollment-wise. Am I right?
Yeah. So a couple of things that come to mind for me, just as you roll this around. As we were talking about this as a district maybe 12 years ago, you mentioned some of this already, that conversation was, this high school is 45 years old. And now here we are, 12 years later, it's 57 years old. If we started this today, we'll be in a 60-plus year high school by the time we shift out of it. So that's worth noting. You also mentioned some acreage pieces. My recollection, help me out with this, is I've been trying to look this up on SFB and other places, but a high school of 1,400 kids, the recommended size in Arizona is 53 acres. And you mentioned, I think we're like 35, 37, 33, something like that.
Yeah.
It's
Is that
about
including
35 acres
fields,
right
do you
now.
think? Do you know?
Sorry?
Do you think that figures including fields, or
Yes,
no? Okay.
yes, I'm confident it is, yeah. So you mentioned we're already small. That's part of the issue earlier, 12 years ago when we were talking about this was,
Yeah.
man, we're bursting at the seams, not just in terms of classrooms, and you've been in classrooms where, we talk about social distancing, but you and your partner are like this all the time because there's just literally no room for anything else. So classrooms are small. They're smaller than a typical classroom would be built these days, where for a while we had capacity issues just with classrooms. We're fortunate we've been able to shuffle some things around. There's 1 or 2 classrooms that are underutilized at the high school currently, but we're close there. But overall acreage, we're small. So whatever solution we come up with needs to have some combination of, the recommendation is plenty of room. And the James option that you're talking about, I'll call it the James option, certainly takes care of that. If the Pike College piece is intriguing in so many ways that you're talking about, but maybe getting creative in terms of having, like you say, a satellite campus or a separate campus. This is Prescott High School, this is Prescott High School East, or this is Prescott Yavapai, whatever we call it, and having the fields where they are. And you've even talked about scenarios, I know in the past, where because we've got the brand new track and the brand new field, that's one of the premier facilities in the state, if not the premier facility. Continuing to use that for the high school for soccer and football and track and things such as that, where we move to another campus. There's lots of creative pieces around it, but the 2 things that came to mind for me is we are in a seriously old facility. We're 12 years ago. That was when this conversation first came up, and even if we got proactive about this today and all the things lined up, including taxpayers waking up in the morning and saying, I'd like to tax myself again to the tune of $100 million. Even if all those things came into line, we're still years away, and we really do need to be forward thinking. And then again, the other piece is we've got to have space. We're too small right now in terms of fields and whatnot. You go to almost any other high school that's been built in the last couple of decades, and you'll immediately note the difference in the amount of space that they've got.
Well, our kids note the difference every time they go to the valley and they come back and go like, did you see that school? It looked like a junior college.
For sure.
Just a perspective piece, Mile High was built in '39, and the current Prescott High School opened in what, 69, guys?
64.
64?
Years old. Yeah.
So that was like a 30-year span at that point. But yeah, and I also, as we talk about maybe a satellite campus, and that's where, and Clark, you may know from your high school experience, and Brian, you may know from the monetary piece, but can they still be affiliated with Prescott High School? And I know we won't have fields there, but could those kids hop in their car and drive to wherever Prescott High School is having practice and games and participate on that campus, even though they're at a different campus? Could they still participate, or does AIA get all upset with combining?
The same school, but there's nothing wrong with having a satellite campus, from what I understand.
So there's a one way to do all of it is, you build a building on Yavapai College, and those kids know their choice is like, well, they have to drive or hop on a bus to go.
Sure.
To go do marching band afterwards. Or
And we don't have people lining up at our door, knocking it down, saying, I'd like to be a bus driver.
Right.
But it is true that during the school day, our bus drivers are not actively engaged in things, and so there's capacity for that almost immediately. If we said after every hour, there's a bus going over here, whatever. You have to get real creative with scheduling and whatnot, but there's possibility for that.
Other comments or questions?
I-
Andy?
I don't care for the location of the James site. I think that's, a few issues I see is, while I think access would be great with Pioneer Parkway and an expanded Willow Creek Road right there, the distance from the community seems too great to me. I don't like that it's in the flight path. I live under that flight path. I just, that gives me a little bit of a fright, having a high school under the flight path there. I also think, I do like the idea of working with Yavapai College, and if there's a way to combine that to give us adequate space, because space is going to be an issue anywhere you try to build right now. But I think getting our students at Yavapai and utilizing the labs and the courses there, and the facilities there would be fantastic. I think we have to be really, really careful just from past experience of having a high school placed on the campus I worked at, that it sounds great when you start talking about it, but it becomes a real tense situation. Sometimes the students that are at the college don't appreciate high school students being on their campus. They feel that there's too much competition for resources. I think those would be some of the issues we would see. I think we just have to be really careful if we go with that route, to make sure that PHS students are prioritized for what they say they're gonna get. And you can't go back later and pull away labs or classrooms from them because, you know, the students who are attending there and paying tuition to go there have issues. So those are some tricky things. I think if we had to do it and that the best location we can find in town is the Deepwell Ranch, then I think I'd say build a new high school and put all the facilities in. Because I hate to see, part of it is I hate not seeing Friday Night Lights, you know, in downtown Prescott.
Yeah.
That really, there's a big community draw, and that's a centerpiece for our community to come to Prescott High School campus and watch football or baseball or basketball or go to the Ruth Street Theater or things like that. So that kind of tugs at my heartstrings a bit.
Sure.
In losing that to generic out by the airport. But I guess that's my concern.
I kind of agree with Andy with all his points. How are our demographics going in the city? Are we trending up still? Are we just kind of stagnant?
Kind of stagnant, I would say. Brian can weigh in on this a little bit too, but in terms of enrollment this year, we are up from last year. We're up from our predictions for our budget, that's really good news. But we're still down a little bit from pre-COVID. So the population moving in to Deepwell Ranch is right now retirement, largely retirement.
So it's not a big draw for young families with little kids?
Yeah, because we were really watching closely thinking, well, maybe we need to build an elementary school out there.
Yeah.
And remember we were talking about like, okay, you know, we got a lot of new students last year, and if all the students that left from COVID had come back and those new students, we would have had some capacity issues. But we're pretty even right now. So, I mean, our capacity's okay right now.
I hate to give that beautiful field and everything to the middle schoolers because they
There'll be gum on the track.
yeah, you know. So I don't know. Are there any options about like increasing capacity on our footprint, like getting more property right where it is, building a 2-story science building or something?
Yeah,
you know,
I like going up.
Yeah. I don't know. I would like to I guess explore that avenue because I really do like it downtown and in the center of the city and the field. Oh my gosh, and I guess I'd kind of like to do that instead of moving it way out in the middle of nowhere because all those schools look generic. You drive through the city, you drive through the county, you drive in, and we were just in Nashville, and we're driving down this little 2-lane road, and we see this building, and we're like, oh, that's a school. You can tell from miles away, you know? It's got stripes around it, it's got barbed wire, no, I don't know. It's either school or prison.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, the new ones tend to be a little bit, I don't know, I would like to see us improve where we are, but that's just my opinion.
Along those lines, we're not going to get very far in this process without hearing that a lot. There are a lot of people. In fact, yesterday I was walking into Mile High, and one of the old teachers that I worked with drove by. He was retired, and he stopped by to say hi. Great guy. And he said, "What's this I'm reading in the paper? You're going to get rid of this place that we all love together, you know?" So there's definitely we'll hear some of that. When I was principal at Mile High, there were 2 opportunities. One, the courts wanted to buy our school and build on the field. And 2, a minor league baseball team wanted to come and build on the field. That teacher I talked to yesterday reminded me that that minor league baseball league was out of business 2 years after we had that conversation. But what happened at the time is that board was hearing a lot, like, we want Mile High, we want Mile High. That board said, it's not for sale. And it just stopped there. I mean, but the community was different then. But, and that whole high school conversation, I mentioned this just briefly earlier, but there was a large group of people that said, no, this is our high school, and this is where we went to school, and this is where we want our kids to go to school. So that will be a piece of this conversation, is there will be folks that say, we like them the way they are. And I won't share my opinion because that's really not part of my job.
I'm,
Is there-
I'm all for selling Mile High. It's kind of a sketchy neighbor, it's not real secure, and now it is more, so, but, yeah, get rid of that and build a new middle school.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the flight path, though.
Yeah.
The other thing, I mean, is there an opportunity, if Yavapai is interested, to kind of do, as you said, this mix of, I mean, if we can't get $100 million bond, for one, would the freshman, sophomore facility at Yavapai be an option and keep juniors and seniors at the high school campus?
Or the other way around.
Well, yeah, or
Freshmen
some
and
mixture of
sophomore,
those
yeah.
types of things that allow us to access the college if they're truly willing to give us that access. That might be
Yeah.
a good option. We're still, the space thing just kind of kills me, that 53 acres, that's a lot of space.
Yes.
And-
There's one part of town where they find that,
And it's
and we
out
don't
there.
like it because it's in the flight path.
Well,
Well, and
don't let that, I
technically-
mean, that's
technically, I mean,
that's me.
when we,
That's a lot of folks out there.
Yeah.
Ron James did roll out a map for me to look at, and the flight path comes from the airport and goes out like that, right?
Yeah.
And so, in here, it's like nothing. Over here, you can do things like fields. So his property's on the outside of the actual flight path, but
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. I mean, it's still airport area.
It's noisy.
Right across the street is flight path where you can't build buildings because,
Right.
if there's an accident, you don't see it coming.
Right.
But for fields and parking lots where people are outside, that's approved. And I also have heard that some schools have built-in flight paths and got that waived by their city.
Uh-huh.
That may have occurred here.
Camille or Isabel, do either of you have comments on this?
I did want to add, I think for especially juniors and seniors, having a college campus and Prescott High School all in one kind of would be really good opportunity for college prep, and especially motivate want to go to college, or if they want to, experiencing that. But also kind of like he said, I don't want to take away what the college students are already paying for, or limiting that.
Also with the division of juniors and seniors and freshmen and sophomores, with the advanced math that we talk about, starting in middle school, I've noticed in a lot of my classes, I have freshmen and sophomores and I'm a senior. They're coming in really smart now. So that would just kind of be hard because we're getting more advanced with our material, and so it'd be hard to split up those classes.
Okay. I would, yeah, Sarah.
I have two questions, and I guess maybe just one comment. I appreciate hearing the experience of having a high school on the college campus, and I'm intrigued to know if there's precedent for this. I am excited about the concept of a 916 progression and the partnership that can be built out there in terms of STEM and beyond. And I'm curious, has anybody in the state done that? Is there currently a community college that has a high school, either magnet, etc.?
I don't know if there is here in the state, but I know there is precedence for it around the country.
Well, there is here in the community, actually.
Yeah.
Tri-City Prep started at Embry-Riddle. And we thought, I mean, both sides beginning that process thought it was a great idea. I think it just, over a period of, they were probably on campus for 7 or 8 years. And over that period of time, more and more issues became apparent. There were issues of minors in facilities that weren't really built for minors. Access to events and things that weren't designed for the high school students. So there's a lot of tricky things that I think you really need to be careful with in putting high school students onto a college campus. Now, being both publicly funded, maybe that will be a different issue.
It may be.
Yeah,
Oh, true,
But-
'cause
yeah.
Well, and it would be helpful to have the experience that Embry-Riddle and Tri-City had, so you can at least project some of those possible
Right,
issues ahead of time.
right.
yeah, so I'd be curious to learn more about the issues. I'd also be curious to learn about the benefits. Like, what did we see over time
Yeah.
with those high school students? Is it in fact what we hypothesize or predict, which is more participation in community college, the tech
Yeah.
and career development? So that would be something I would want to learn more about if we were to explore options with either putting the high school there or some sort of magnet or extension. The other question I have that I would want more information about is, you mentioned obviously, like financials, it's really early, so it's just a shot in the dark, but the cost over time, like the sustaining cost, because I do know that putting in a new facility, my hunch is that as opposed to sharing resources with the college, that might be more expensive over time. And I don't know for certain, but certainly if we were to do some sort of hybrid where it's like build the new campus but also have a magnet, I would just be curious to see what those numbers look like over time. And then the comment I'll make is just that in listening to other folks share, I think there is something really special about having students downtown and in our site, and I wonder, if that's maybe important. Otherwise, yeah, the idea of Deep Well Ranch, it's a little bit out of town, and it just makes it a little less part of our community, which I think our community needs right now to have students centered more. So that's just a comment. I don't know what that means for Mile High. I don't necessarily want to weigh in on that right now, but I think there would be some heartstrings that are tugged to see that go to someone else.
Clark?
So several thoughts have come to mind as people have made excellent comments and asked questions and whatnot. As far as the model for high school being linked to a college or on the campus and whatnot, and he's got some experience with that, and some of the things I'm sure were positive, others ultimately were negative, and there was probably a mutual decision to separate.
Yeah, yeah.
ASU Polytechnic down in the valley does exactly this same thing, right? On the ASU campus, they've got a high school. The ADEQ, the horsey school, the equine school, excuse me, out in Prescott Valley, that's how they offer pretty much all of their classes. People don't go there because they want to be around horses for the most part. People go there because Yavapai College has an extension literally right there, and the kids go across the street and take almost all of their classes from Yavapai College. And that's a model that certainly has some legs here locally,
Yeah.
and people have been interested in. What that looks like with some of the issues that you raised, those are absolutely legitimate things to think about. So I'm not advocating for anything, but those are.
Yeah, and I don't think they can be overcome.
Sure,
I think
sure.
it just,
Yeah.
you
You
just have
just
to
need
be
to be aware.
sure that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Couple of other thoughts that, as people have shared before, that's far north. You might recall these discussions. That's exactly what people said when they built Prescott High School, where they built it. That is so far out of town. You people, that's crazy. Tremendous push, seriously. Tremendous pushback in the community because there was nothing there. Are you kidding me? There'll never be houses there. Now it's in the smack dab middle of things. Those of us who've been watching the trend of growth in Prescott over the last few years could probably take a real quick half step back and say, yeah, that is not going to be out of town very long at all. So we need to think forward probably rather than backwards as far as that's concerned. Again, not advocating for anything, but That's not far out of town, and all of the growth that will occur from here will be little bits of infill here and there, and then north. Cara was asking great questions about demographics. We're privy to this information a lot in City Council. Prescott has had spikes and ebbs, but over the last 40 years, 2% growth per year, which is far slower than Prescott Valley, far slower than the rest of Yavapai County, far slower than Arizona, but 2%
2%
population growth.
Just population. Just-
Now
we all-
those, as you know, you can look around town and see that
it's at
1.7%
2%.
of those are nice older folks who have moved to town. So it's not like we're totally exploding, but it is the case that almost all of the recent plats that we have given approval for in terms of development include multifamily housing. And certainly that's not exclusive to younger families, but it's bound to attract a higher percentage, being lower cost, et cetera, of younger families than most of our recent housing developments have. Now, that said, that was kind of the idea for the depot ranch pieces that are already in, and that's gone mostly to older folks, just because of the way the market works. And I, Cara really brought up a good point in terms of, well, what if we went up at the high school? That's a great idea in a lot of ways, and if we're looking to just expand capacity at the high school, that could absolutely take care of it. The doctor's offices across the street, I know, have been for sale over the years. That's one thought about a piece of land that's nearby. It's the only piece of land nearby that could potentially become available. And of course, we've got room on our campus to go up. Lots of places do that. If we're trying to solve just a capacity issue at the high school, that's probably the first place we ought to look. If we're trying to get creative about partnerships with other places, or making Mile High available to the community for a convention center or other things, then that doesn't address that directly, but it's certainly a creative idea for if we're looking at capacity issues at the high school, which we are not yet, but need to look forward, don't we, to what that looks like. So.
What I am hearing is that there is interest in looking at this concept. And what I would like to suggest is that we have the administration put together an ad hoc committee to take a look at all aspects of this and come up with information for us and suggestions or whatever. Reactions to that? Does
I
that
think
sound like a
that's a great
reasonable
idea.
plan?
I think a lot of people, no matter whether they're retired or have kids in the district or whatever the case situation they're in, I think that you would get a lot of interest from the people who are currently here. Now, and that brings me to something else, which is kind of in the same line. Holly is kind of like continuing ed. Okay, right now, nobody gets it, they don't get credit, in fact, they pay to go there. But that would appeal to everyone of any age, because they have college for kids there. They have, you could take there whatever you needed or wanted. And as far as the committee to sound this out, part of our committee, part of our committee work was to present different models of schools that have done this already. And what it would suggest, even as far going as there are a lot of that, are in use right now. So the ad hoc committee that you were talking about, Deb, was really important, because they could suggest things that they knew that you didn't know. Example, a whole new paradigm, like a school within a school. And looking at other area schools to see if we could offer classes here that couldn't be offered anywhere else. That kind of
Yeah.
thing.
I think it would.
The original question was, is that a good idea? And I agree with Clark. This is the chance you have to be really innovative and impress the community. Once I know that there are a couple schools in the valley that are just known by reputation because they look good. And people are impressed by them. And they don't have to have, you know, a class or a program for seniors if they don't want to.
Yep.
They have enough places where seniors could go. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, I'm generally picking up consensus that asking a committee to look into this and bring that information. I'm seeing head shakes, so I am going to tell you to get on it.
Love it. I've been thinking lots about it. It sounds like fun to me, really, and you know, think it would answer all the questions that were in here. You know, that group, I think, should go visit schools, not just in the state, but maybe in
Yeah.
the country. That group should survey
This is not
community.
to pay for your trip to Hawaii.
Oh,
Sorry,
Hawaii has the best. No,
I
I'm
don't
just kidding.
care.
Surveys and forums, community forums. And, you know, we kind of did this when we restructured, when we closed the 2 schools. You know, in fact, it was community ideas that gave us what we have now, which is the 5-6 at Granite Mountain and the 7-8 at Mile High. So, and also, you know, Pike College is a great partner without even talking about any of this, but their plans for this are pretty darn serious. I mean, they're hiring an architect. They're gonna have a pretty serious committee, and they've asked us to be a part of it. And so we'll kind of be watching how that works. And I just would imagine updates to the board, most board meetings, and just say, here's where we're at, here's what we're doing, here's what we found out, and we'll kind of study this together as a community. But it sounds like fun to me, and it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, I would like to suggest that the committee should include students and parents
Yep.
and community members as
Yep.
well as
Yep.
district employees.
Absolutely.
So,
And if I can just say one last thing about it, just to kind of bring it all the way back around. All of this talk over the years about Mile High, I mean, and we're right, lots of people love Mile High, and for a long time, the district was not willing to even talk about it, but it's a part of our role in the community that these are the community schools, and we've been hearing for years that last great open space in downtown Prescott would really help our businesses and would help our community in a large way, and that's part of our role. So, you know, so whether we're in love with that building or not, I'm glad that we're continuing to be open to that and how we can continue to be a great partner to our community. It could be a real big economic piece for Prescott overall.
I just want to, with the committee, just make sure that they investigate the commingling of our monies and what we're going to have to spend. and
Yeah,
what-
yeah.
how we're
Yeah,
gonna have to
yeah.
spend it.
I'm envisioning lots of IGAs and, you know, including like, we probably have to do IGAs even about sharing labs that are already existing. Like,
yeah,
there will probably be some money exchanged for that, and that might change each year depending on the needs, so.
I'll just make a comment about some of the folks in our community. We still see lots of posts on Facebook about Miller Valley being torn down and what a terrible thing. And the other day on longtime Prescott residents, I don't know if anyone's on that on Facebook, but, you know, the high school used to be kitty corner here where the county administration building is. And eventually the middle school was there when the high school moved to Mile High. And they posted a picture of it and someone commented, another great old building torn down. So.
oh, yeah, there's,
It will be controversial to sell Mile High, for sure. But, like Joe said, it'd be a great help to our,
I think
We
that
have
building,
some pushback about selling the current city hall, same reason, people
Yeah.
are nostalgic for it, but it's a little bit like a car from the 1970s. You can keep dumping money
Yeah.
into it
yeah.
and keep driving it, or you can say, you know what, this has been a great car, I love it, but I've got to get something new. And that's sort of where we're at with some of our facilities citywide.
I think that building was actually condemned. I don't
I know,
think it
but people
was
don't know
structurally
that.
safe.
matter.
People don't know that. It's like they're complaining about El Taro or El
Yeah.
Chaparral being
Yeah.
torn down and
Well, I'm complaining about that.
Well, and I
you
think
could have
part
bought
of,
it. It was for sale for 10 years, Joe.
I know. I just
Part of
kept eating
this
that
comes-
salsa.
comes down to the rationale for why we would need to do this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think that citizens have a right to know why we would even consider spending
think-
that money.
From a community perspective, I mean, one thing I think Prescott has lacked for a long time with the tourism we have is a convention center in downtown.
Mhm.
You know, and I think if you just look at it objectively, that's a perfect spot. There is so much that could be done with that location there for the downtown, for the Prescott community. So, you
I
know,
always thought the Hilton was supposed to have the conference center in it.
it's
but-
just too small, I think. I don't think they have the space.
Well, and you never know, but most of the interested people in that building have talked about preserving, I mean, there's some beautiful architecture there that they could preserve and tear down part and build upon that
Yeah,
and incorporate some of the history.
yeah.
So,
Okay, I think we will look for very interesting information from the committee.
Yep.
So, and it would be good if we had at least bi-monthly reports on how that's going.
Yep.
So, okay, next item on our agenda is board self-evaluation. I would like to review first what, for the last 2 years, what our goals have been. The first was to work together with the superintendent to share responsibility for the orientation of new board members and forming a new and inclusive team. We suddenly had, when Connie and I came on the board, we had 3 board members who'd been on for some time. And then Connie and I came and were brand new. And we really needed a little more background or training or whatever on specifically what this board does and so on. We have put a number of things
Right.
in place to make that happen. I am curious from Cara and Andy and now Sarah, whether you have felt that we have met this goal, or if there are pieces of it we need to continue to work on. I mean, it's something we need, I think, it's something we need to be aware of going forward, but does it need to be one of our board goals? No.
I do think that having worked and hired and fired in several districts, that it is not enough. What they're getting, this state, at least I can speak for, has, so many weird things going on, and that aren't in the best interest of the families and the parents and the kids. So I think something more could be done there, and I don't, that's kind of aside from what we've been talking about. But I do agree that there should be a better onboarding process.
And what types of things would you envision a need for greater onboarding?
I'm trying to think back. Well, one thing would be an introduction to and I think this is important, especially to a lot of parents whose kids are planning on applying to every school in the Ivy League. One of the things that I think is important is to get people to be interested in another committee that would talk about improvements needed over current situation. In
Yeah.
other words, it's not coming out of nowhere. It's something that has been considered. So that is something maybe you couldn't do right away, but
But a committee that's designed to help parents know what's
Yeah.
going on
yeah,
really is not a board action. I mean, it's not onboarding of board members. It's really onboarding of parents.
That too. You
Yeah.
can make it all in one, yeah.
So,
You
Other-
guys gave us this nice big book. It was wonderful. Still reading through it. So, I mean, it would be so cool if we could just all get in the same room and like have dinner together or something and visit and get to know each other, but we can't. So it just makes it really, really hard to
It does.
even understand like where other people on the board are coming from or where they grew up or if they have any kids or, you know, it just, there's not an appropriate time to ever do that.
If
Unless
we-
there is and I'm just
Yeah.
not seeing
Well,
it.
there is, and COVID ruined that for us, but we're getting back to it. That's ASBA, when we go to those conferences, and it's posted, and we spend time together, we do dinner together if whoever wants to, that kind of thing, and we've been able to do that a
Well, I
lot.
would like to not have to go to ASBA to do it, you know, I mean, I don't wanna have to go to a conference out of town away from my family to go visit with my other board members.
But that has
you
been
know.
the professional development for the board
Yeah.
for 30 years. But we can
So-
do it differently.
it's,
I
you
think
know,
that's all I saw,
but
so.
I fear that if we set up a dinner or whatever, that we'd have to have it be an open
Yeah, and-
meeting.
Yeah, you
And
can't,
it is frustrating.
right.
So that's the only thing
Yeah.
I would like to, I mean, see, but
Yeah,
I don't see how we can do it, so that's.
What's neat about ASBA, or I think the purpose of it too, is that you're networking with every school board in Arizona. And I think every school board in Arizona is a member except for 3 school boards, so. So some of us are going to the law conference in a couple weeks, and then they'll have their annual conference around Christmas time.
From my perspective, it just felt like a fire hose, you know, and I'm still
yeah,
trying to swallow all that. There's so much, I think, that you have to learn about school funding and how the stuff gets put into bills that go to the governor's desk and you don't hear about it until after it's signed and now you've got to react to things. I mean, those would be the things that surprised me more, I guess, is just the amount of information that you need to be prepared
yeah.
to take in has been
It sounds,
difficult.
sorry, Andy.
No, that's fine.
It sounds to me as if you think we could still stand to continue with that goal, but develop some new activities related to it. That the things we had on here before we've done, but we need to figure out what else we
Yeah.
might need to do.
I think everything can always be revised and
Oh,
reviewed.
yeah, you can
Improve.
always improve.
Yeah.
Okay,
How about Sarah?
yeah, Sarah?
I felt really welcomed. I know it's a lot, I agree, it's a lot of information. I think there's still a lot of onboarding to come. But I felt very welcomed. I acknowledge that during COVID, it's not as easy to like go on physical tours and kind of just drop by a school
Yeah.
and have those kind of moments. So the only feedback I would give is just considering, because this is a lot to read and I read it. However, we're educators and there are other modes of learning. So maybe just like, rather than just the invitation, like sit down with Brian sometime, or
Oh,
maybe just have kind of like a schedule, like go
Yep.
meet all these
Okay.
people. And the only other thing to consider, it's a little bit of work, but videos are great, especially for things like the physical orientation or like the history, things like that aren't necessarily, well, they do change, but that aren't necessarily going to change, so you don't have to reinvent them
Okay.
all the time.
all right,
That history video that
yeah,
played at
the
convocation was
stand,
really nice.
yeah, it was.
That's great.
So, okay. The second goal that we've had was to continually monitor progress toward the goals and outcomes of the district strategic plan to ensure that all strategic plan goals are being met. When we put this one in place, it was, again, the people who had been on the board for a long time sort of had absorbed the strategic plan and knew what it was and so on. And the new people really, it was wading in fairly deep. My personal opinion is that this is something that, you know, we need to just continually monitor that strategic plan. But I don't know that we necessarily need to, we have incorporated it in our board meetings and our retreats and such, so I'm feeling like we can maybe set that one aside as a specific goal, but still continue the processes that we've put in place. Thoughts?
The only thing I'd add is, so we're on year 6 of really a 10-year strategic plan. So in the next couple of years, we need to start thinking about
Looking forward.
and maybe, you know, renewing that process or having discussion as a board about how we want that to look for maybe the next 5 or 10 years.
Can we modify the presentation of the strategic plan to the board to make it just a little shorter, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, and goal number 3 was, together with the superintendent, review student achievement regularly to determine where to focus support and efforts. I'm kind of, as I look toward next year, I'm thinking that we maybe should take some of our retreat time to spend looking at achievement and where we might need to focus and things we might need to put more into. So we have more time to really talk through. I do feel like in our board meetings, we have so much to cover that we kind of skim over those things. We see it, but we don't really have time to dig into it. And so I would suggest that we go with that, but I'm not sure I would necessarily make it a specific goal. But I'm willing to.
Is this looking at like testing data and stuff?
Testing data, why are we continually struggling somewhat with middle school math, those kinds of things where we have more time to really dig into those issues.
I'm not sure that it should even be I don't know. Okay, it would be a board goal. I think looking into the data should be more at the school level, and we could maybe get a report on it. But I don't know if we're in any capacity to like give any input. Like, I mean, I'm an old teacher, so I can give some input, but I don't know if my input has any bearing on the subject. I don't know. It just seems like it's a lot of numbers for us to look at, and you would have to teach us more than we could give you. Like, you would have to teach us how to interpret them before we could give you any. And I don't know if that's really my opinion. If it's a
we
board.
could get a report on the general trends or whatever, and talk about what our concerns might be and what we'd like to see focused on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's what this.
And I'm suggesting that we not continue with this particular goal.
I
As a board goal.
agreed, having come in at the same time you did, there's that. And then as we were talking about that, I look back on some of the other committees that that I've seen that are really good committees. And there are no administrators, no offense, on these committees. They're all teachers. And they're teams of teachers. It doesn't have to be every math teacher in the district. It can be, I don't know if any of you have ever done curriculum maps where they're reviewed every year by the team just to see if they covered everything that they wanted to cover. So in a way, that is a goal.
Connie?
Yeah.
May I just interrupt for a minute? That we do that on a regular basis with our teachers.
Uh-huh.
They collaborate about once a month, if not even more than that, sometimes twice a month, on that very issue that you just mentioned.
I guess I knew that, sort of. But, you know, what is the best way to do that? Maybe that comes with the onboarding, maybe it comes with something else, but the, you know, the math teachers, I know, well, you're right. Most of the subject area teachers do have an opportunity to do that.
You know, as we discuss this, my brain is going more and more to, you know, you might be familiar with, we do this McCrell Balanced Leadership, where they build the trilaterals. You've been seeing the trilaterals. They're really just school goals. But we spend 2 days after school gets out, we bring teams of teachers in with their principals, and we're digging into all data. And so you all see some of that as presentations, with the school presentations. We built that in, but you know, it's kind of quick. But I wonder if part of that, I call it June 1st, part of that June 1st McCrell Balanced Leadership, Kelly, maybe we could do sort of a summary type situation and bring that back to the board as a report, because the reason that keeps coming to my mind is because it's kind of like Cara was talking about. It's this big, powerful, just data grind, and people are pretty excited about it because it's their own data and they want to find out how they did, and then they want to find out what they need work on. And so maybe we can do like a general district report after that, while it's hot. And then I like that we continue to have the principals talk about their trilaterals or school goals in each meeting. And I also I think we should do the academic presentation that Renee just did last board meeting. I mean, that's what did our recent test scores look like. So we have a lot of those things in place, but you know, I think there's an opportunity to really kind of roll together all of that work of all the schools right after school gets out and share it with the board in one of those summer board meetings.
Okay.
I think I heard you say, Deb, that you're suggesting that we not continue this as a goal as a board, that you guys not continue this as a, and, you know, certainly we're always gonna keep you informed, like that's
Yeah.
not really a goal, you're automatically going to do this, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be something we put out in front of us, because we're excited to share with you
Yeah.
what we're doing, and I think that really the bottom line is to keep you guys informed. You know, as Cara was saying, it's not like your guys are gonna make the decisions, we are the people with the degrees, right? And we're the people who have our head around this at all times. And so to keep you guys really informed of this and help you understand why we're making the decisions we're doing. And then if you have additional input, that is fantastic, because many of you have educational backgrounds and have some insights that we are unaware of, including our students. So I love that idea, and you know, doing our board retreat is a great time so that you can really hear it in detail and that you can ask questions that we don't normally get to do in board meetings. So I love your idea, because basically you're saying, yeah, you're not the decision makers, you guys are, like, need to be informed. When people ask you questions, you're going to be well informed around it.
I'm going to share the results of the board evaluations that some of you completed, so that we can talk about our goals for this year. And I would like to believe that with our goals, that we would take those goals, put practices in place that will simply be continued if they're of value, and that we don't have to continue to have them as goals that we're, you know, tracking, that they simply become part of what we do. So, and I also think it's important that we not have more than at most 4 goals. I think having more goals than that is counterproductive. So anyway, I'm going to share the feedback we got from those self-evaluations. As far as the items that, most of the items received satisfactory ratings from everyone on the board, or everyone who responded. But there were a few that had at least one person who said they needed improvement. None of them were marked unsatisfactory, but a few were needs improvement. So I'm just going to share those with you so you can kind of keep those in mind as we're looking forward. One was, the first one, and this had,
Can you give us a second to have her?
oh,
pass them out?
sorry about that, I forgot. I had mine.
Go this way. Okay, let's go this way. There's 3
There we
per
go.
packet.
3 per.
You get the whole
Okay.
packet.
Big 3 per packet.
That's a
so
whole packet.
That's a whole packet.
Here we go.
We'll
Keep
pass
it
it all
together.
the way down
Keep it
to,
together.
Kelly, do you have these or not?
I do not,
These are for board members or everybody?
everyone, I made enough for everyone.
Okay. No, everybody gets 3.
Okay.
3,
Everybody gets
guys.
the whole
It's a
thing.
packet.
Yes,
Yeah,
Take
it's
the
a-
whole
All
3
those go to
things.
Kelly.
Copy.
All those go to Kelly. All these go there.
I love your teacher voice, Tara.
There we go. Sorry.
There you go.
There you go, there's your packet.
There's lots of teacher
That's
voices in here.
So,
Deb, do you
Okay,
need
we
the
got it.
packet?
You good?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Joe's last.
Okay, the first item that we had some needs improvements on, more than one, was A2. The board clearly interprets its position on controversial matters pertaining to the district, enabling the superintendent to carry out the wishes of the board. This has been a particularly difficult year in that regard. And so I was not too surprised to see that as one of the areas we may need improvement. The next one is item C2. One person said that differences of opinion influencing board member votes are based on the issues at hand and not a personality basis. And one person felt we needed improvement in that area. The next one was D2, and that was also one person, where it says the board members make every effort to become acquainted with the personnel of the district. And one person said we need improvement there. Then, yeah,
I was just
Tara.
gonna jump right in there.
Go ahead.
Maybe when we onboard, we all came and met with Joe. Can, Joe, you would like take us around to the different offices and introduce us to the different staff members? So
You
we
bet.
actually know who they are?
Yep.
Good idea.
Wonderful.
Thank you. So we don't need to make that a goal. We can simply
No,
make
yeah,
that
Joe.
happen.
We'll just put it on Joe.
Sure.
Thank you. Section 3, or Section E, item 1 had one person who said we need improvement. The board makes an effort to keep informed about the instructional program by providing for periodic reports as deemed necessary and by periodic visitation in the schools. Item number 2E, 2 people said the board attempts to gain information from the community pertaining to instructional program needs. And then item 3E, one person again said the board maintains policies necessary to enable the educational staff to develop the educational program required to meet the needs of the community. I'm not sure, especially that number 3, if that doesn't kind of blend right into that discussion of how we're doing, where there may be some issues and so on, and where we think the focus needs to be on making things happen with that, so,
I'm, just one clarification.
yeah.
This whole, survey, or whatever it was,
Yes.
self-appraisal, who made up these questions? I couldn't understand whether I was supposed to be evaluating the whole board or
Yeah.
myself on the question. Like,
Ah, whole
It's-
board.
It's out of the board policy.
so it's out of the board policy, which is,
Board evaluation. So it's, I think the whole policy manual was reapproved, last March? We went through the entire
okay.
policy with ASBA and,
And this wasn't designed specifically for this year or whatever, but this does refer to the whole board.
And my thoughts about the whole board.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
okay. Finally, the last one where, one person said it needs improvement is the board keeps the community informed about the financial needs of the district. So we could go out and beg.
we did
Then,
that in November.
yeah. Then in the places for comments and so on, as far as the challenges that face us this year, and there are a number of these, if I say something that you want further expanded on, or you have a comment, go ahead and speak up. Challenges, COVID's impact on all facets of the school and community, and there were a number of COVID things here. Communicating regularly with members of the community in an open forum environment. Interpersonal relationships among and between members. Politicization of basic health and safety procedures. Community members unwilling to accept board decisions. Keeping on top of ever-changing dynamics with COVID. Managing expectations, adequate finances, middle school math improvement, response to COVID, and FIG,
What's FIG?
filling in the gaps. Under weaknesses, there were 3 items. Lack of regular opportunities for board members to interface with other board members and staff. Second, while trying to address the needs of all, sometimes the loudest people have too much power over the process. And the third was parent involvement. And under accomplishments, we had support for the PUSD Foundation in its teacher grant program, adapting to the obstacles presented by COVID, finishing the 2021 school year with graduation at PHS, and children in school full-time was a huge accomplishment. We mitigated the spread of COVID with masks and our efforts, and that allowed us to return to some sense of normalcy. It is frustrating that this now hurts our efforts when COVID is back with a vengeance. Another one, staff confidence in the board and administration through COVID, and maintenance of fiscal stability. So, anything that we went over where you would say, I think that needs to be looked at as a goal for the board for the coming year.
Can I say something that isn't exactly what you want answered, but I just want to plug it in here, though. I believe that the data presentation that we saw was an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah.
And that should be
Okay.
a regular procedure, whether it's for the math
Okay.
team or
Yeah.
the entire faculty, you know. Okay.
Okay. One thing I picked up on several places in here was basically what had been mentioned about connections, really, between board members and so on. And I do think if we keep that first goal, which we talked about, that putting in activities that will help to know each other better and develop relationships can certainly be a part of that first goal.
Please, no team building events.
You know you love them.
Ropes course, or?
I have a whole roll of string over here.
An obstacle course, maybe.
I think we need some kind of goal. So it says right here on this board responsibilities page, something about board shall act as a general agent of the state of Arizona, carrying out the will of the people of the district in the matter of public education. So something that measures what the district wants, the people of the district want, and meshes with what the teachers want. Not the teachers want, we need a way to, I guess, to listen and to be able to adapt and say, yes, we're doing what the community is saying.
Cara,
I
what are
think
you
that needs to be
saying
a
when
goal.
you say, listen to who?
So these are all members of the district, people of the district, so it doesn't really, this says that we need to be attuned to the retirees, the parents, everyone in the district, as to what they feel education should be. So I just think there needs to be a communication, something that we do to listen to everyone, not just the parents or the, I guess the parents.
So is the definition of district all people in Yavapai County or in our area that people who, like, what is the definition of district?
Voters?
I'm guessing everyone who lives in PUSD district. It has a map, it has boundaries, I know. And everyone who lives inside, I would guess, is a member of people of the district. So I just,
Okay.
just seems like a goal to me, that we need to
Yep.
somehow be able to listen to them and chew on it and see what happens. But I just don't see that happening. But that
Yeah,
could be
that's a great challenge of board members is who and how you listen. Actually, John Mackin, before he left, shared for a long time with me about what he learned over his years about whether it comes from yourself or your constituents or how you balance that. Because yeah, I think it's a concern sometimes when, one member of the public comes and speaks to a board meeting and then we make a decision that goes against a committee that worked on something for 7 months. So that's such a good balance of how you do that. But maybe it's surveys, maybe it's forums. There's a lot of ways to get that community input.
We should get you some email addresses.
Yeah.
Well, and I think part of, we've talked about this before, what can board members do to enhance district success? That's getting out and listening to various parts of the community, and ways to try to get a broad base of feedback from people in the district.
So
Students.
I just think it should be a goal, and,
Yeah.
I don't have a solution right at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
But, I just think that should be a goal.
I do want to hang on that for a moment too. I've only been here a short time, but I do know that in those weekly updates, it does seem like there is a priority to communicate what members of the district, the community at large, are communicating. I think it is a little parent heavy, but I think we are, this year in particular, our community is speaking with regards to public education, and I do feel like they're heard, but that doesn't mean there's not room for improvement or different forums for that.
Well, and it's problematic that, if people contact me, I genuinely listen and try to understand where they're coming from. I don't think they always think that I am listening because I don't always respond exactly the way they want me to respond. In fact, I don't think I've been responding to almost anybody exactly the way they want me to respond this year. And it's very difficult to really have people understand that you really are listening to what they're saying.
So Deb, what do you do with all that knowledge that you acquired or ideas
Took
that you
in?
acquired from the general public?
I get information from the general public.
No,
have
I get
been-
it that you
yeah,
get it all.
yeah.
What do you do with it? I'm having trouble doing something with it.
Processing.
What do we do with it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tricky. Yeah.
I use it in making my decisions on the board. But I not only use information from people that contact me, I also do a tremendous amount of reading on the topics that are impacting the board at that point. One thing I've learned this year is no matter what position someone takes, there is some expert who endorses that opinion. And so it's very difficult to,
So
you know.
I understand how you're processing it, but is there a way that we can take, like, what people are telling you, and what people are telling you, and what people are telling Connie, what they're all telling us, and like, so we could all come together and say, these are some of the topics that are concerning the people who have talked to us. Is there some way to all get together and talk about them? I mean, is there a venue that we can do that, or is it just, I take who people are talking to me and that's what I
Yeah,
think, so
yeah.
that's how I vote?
I'm
just asking.
I think
I'm not saying.
what you're saying now, that we need a means of sharing our collective.
What you're hearing.
Yeah, what we're
What the concerns
hearing,
are.
because
Yeah.
I'm obviously hearing, I have old people in my store. I'm hearing an old people point of view, okay? I'm,
Elderly,
I-
please.
no, those old people are in, I'm old. Like, I don't care anymore, I'm old. So elderly, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
it
apologize.
would be helpful to have a means for
I
compiling
Yeah,
and
I
sharing.
just don't understand the process, that's what I'm
Yeah,
confused.
yeah.
I'm, we all get all this information, you guys get lots of information, like, where do we take this information? It's just we internalize it, and then what do we do with it? That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
And this is where my view would be that we have one central gathering point for that input, as opposed to individual board members that may or may not talk to one another
Well, we can't
about it.
talk
And
to
we
each other.
really,
No.
if it's a voting issue, we can't talk to each other about it.
Even if it's a non-voting issue, can we talk to each other?
I don't know.
You could put it on an agenda as a discussion item.
If-
Two of you can.
But if we had a central gathering point for those comments, where then it was distributed, you have an opportunity to comment at this point. Board member number 1 says this is their comment, and that's read in a board meeting as the responses to those general inquiries that come in. I feel that the information that I get is sometimes slanted in one direction that I think is it's difficult to even engage with people that are just shouting at you. And I would much prefer that we each have a chance to read one comment from one person and give our feedback to that could then be put in a public forum, as opposed to, am I expected to respond to this person that is yelling and insulting me? That is not how I want to approach things. So,
You have an awful constituency.
Well, we all have the same constituency.
Well,
But that's
The-
just
the-
it.
the trick
Everybody
is,
doesn't
though,
talk to each of us.
you get,
Right.
you get all kind, I mean, and this is, I think this is, it comes down to the individual choice of a board member and how you represent your constituents. And that's what, I'd love to have John tell us what he learned and what he thought about that, because he'd been round and round with it for years, and he and his wife talked about it, and he finally had said, yeah, you listen to all those people, and then you come in with your heart, and, you know, but that's his. Yours could be different.
Right.
But what I want to point out is this, sometimes you get stuff that would not benefit the district to talk about in public, it would hurt the district, so I'll just make something up. Let's say everyone wanted our buses to be green instead of yellow, and they kept emailing you and saying, green buses, green buses, green buses. At some point you go, thanks for your input. This is not gonna get momentum to be part of we have amazing, wonderful things that are happening in this district that we should be focusing on and talking about and getting better at and fixing. And if we spend all our meetings talking about green buses, then that's what shows up on the front page of the paper. And that's not what we're doing here. So I think that's part of it. Any two of you can get an agenda item on the meeting. And so it could be a discussion or it could be a vote, but
Okay,
that would
wait,
allow you to
wait.
talk about that.
Wait, I specifically talked to Deb, and she said I needed 3 people to get an agenda
No.
item on.
2,
2.
yeah.
Okay, so I was misunderstood you,
Yeah.
because I thought it was 3,
Just
and then
2.
it was totally
Right.
impossible.
Yeah, no, just 2.
Just 2. Thank
Right.
you.
I'm wondering.
But I'd ask that we keep a focus on the vision of the district and try not to bring things that are just total distractions or that the community grabs onto that's not really who we are. And there are lots of those things pressing down on us, if you understand what I'm saying.
And
That's where
Yes.
I've always tried to protect the district in terms of like, there's nothing good that will come out of that conversation, and it
Right.
totally detracts from our focus of what we do for kids
Right.
every day.
Right.
I'm just wondering if, I'm guessing, this is just my guess, I could be wrong, because I don't know what it would be like to live in your shoes, but I'm guessing that most of you get the same kind of questions or comments or questions.
I don't know,
But
we
there-
can't talk to each other, so we don't know.
Well, anyway, I'm making this assumption because I think it probably be pretty fair just based on what I know about people, is that they have the same questions. They might be worded differently, some of them more aggressively than others. Could it be a frequently asked question, you know, these are the questions we're getting from our community and here's our response to them. And when then people email you, you have the response. All you have to do is copy and paste it because you guys know that you all agree on that response. So if it's, why aren't students wearing masks? Then all of you discuss what would be the response to that. And that is the standard response that you never then have to add your own personality to. You just give them that response.
That's what
I
I'm
disagree.
getting at.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think that we are elected board members for our responses. I think people elected us for our individual, what happens if we can't come up with a opinion that we all agree on?
Right.
There are issues that we cannot agree on. So I think we are elected for our own individual responses, and that's our responsibility to the public, to give our, what they
Would
elected
some of
us
those
for.
be common though? I'm guessing that some of them would be common. Maybe the mask is not a great example, but for instance, you know, questions that you guys might get about testing or what we're doing for filling in the gaps. Those are like standard answers that you don't have to have an opinion about it. This is what our school's doing about filling in the gaps for students. And then you don't have to kind of generate that answer yourself because you're getting information from our schools about what we're doing. So that's a standard answer that all of you could use and probably one that many people are getting. Like, what are we doing about these kids and what they missed out on last year? So maybe it's not the face mask one.
So when we have conversations like this on my teams and DLT, and I go, okay, well, actually what we're doing right now is we're digging into a goal area. It seems to me like this is a great conversation about how you can make decisions and how you represent as a board member. I think it's a huge topic, and it might be a neat goal area for us to study over time. I mean, I can guarantee you that if you go to ASBA law or you go, there will be 3 breakouts on this topic right here. And or we could bring them here to talk to us directly, or we could bring our attorney or someone else. Because there's a couple things, Carl, like you can talk to board members. You can talk to one board member. You can talk to each of these board members, but you can't lobby them for a vote. You can't talk to about something that will end up being a voting item. But you can talk and go, hey, are you getting hit by these emails? So we should clarify sort of some of the things you can and can't do, because there's a way to talk legally.
Obviously, I have been misinterpreting.
No, well, this is hard for everybody, Cara.
I think we all.
This is an age-old, really hard thing for board members to figure out this open meeting law and what we can and can't do. But it might be a good goal, and have a series of people that come in and a series of discussions. I think it would help each other. And I think, like, you're hitting on philosophy just like John Mackin was. Ultimately, he came to that where it's like, it does need to be my decision. They voted for me, and I'm going to listen and make my best decision. And I've heard judges talk to juries about that too, where they go, your gut's super important, that's why we picked you on this jury or whatever. So I think this would be, you might want to consider that.
So how would you
Word a
word that goal?
I'd word it somewhere around, and Cara, help me, everyone help me with this, but I mean, somewhere around a study of philosophy of how to interpret your constituents' concerns and turn that into board action when appropriate.
And I think
You're starting to sound like a lawyer.
some really good news around this, and you've alluded to it a couple of times, is we don't have to be on our own. There are 264 other school districts in the state, and
Right.
262 of them all belong to the same professional organization, Arizona Association of School Boards. And there's specific training around this available.
Yeah.
So in as far as there are pieces I don't know or don't understand yet, man, I would make myself I'd make that training available to myself.
Yeah.
And find out, what is best practice? What do other people do? How does that work? What about this thing? I can't talk with two people, but I can talk with one. What's that? There's very specific training available annually and on an ongoing basis from that organization.
And when you get deep in that, you look at your policies and you say, does this reflect what we need it to reflect? And how could we tweak them to allow us to do what we need to do to get this work done?
How does it sound if we said study how to interpret and respond to constituent comments?
Please
I don't wanna just respond to them. I wanna figure out how we can digest them and maybe make them part of our, okay? So it sounds like you're just saying, okay, you're gonna talk to me and I'm gonna spit something back at you and then nothing's gonna ever
Oh,
be done with it.
Yeah, no, I was
So-
referring to a board response, a board action or decision or whatever.
Yeah, I wanna say that we're taking their comments and we're digesting them and we're seeing if they fit into what we, as an academic community, the teachers and the administrators, what they see as a, okay, I'm just gonna eat my donut holes and be done.
I'm
You reminded me
going
I've got
to have us take a 7-minute break. So you can get up and if you need to use the restroom or get something to drink or whatever.
Can we bring the omelet bar back? Please.
So what I've kind of picked up at this point is 3 goals. The first one was.
You got 3 out of that?
Yeah, well, kind of, okay? One was that first goal that we're gonna kind of keep, but adapt to activities to help us try to create better connections with each other, or with the board, or new people, or whatever.
And maybe, can we get a list of everybody's phone numbers?
Previous board members?
No. Like current
I
board
assume so.
members?
Yeah.
I don't know
Okay.
why
Do
you.
you have everybody's phone number? Maybe I'm just not privy.
In that book I gave you, there should be a list of even my phone number, Marty's, everyone at the district. It should be in
Okay.
there. If not, I'll get it
But
to you.
we'll pull them and we'll scan it and send it to you guys.
My book is
And-
dusty somewhere.
And I think maybe the miscommunication on the number of people to get it, I probably said you need 2, but I didn't specify that 2 included you.
Oh, okay.
And I suspect it sounded like you need 2 more. And so
Gotcha.
I apologize for throwing you off.
That's okay.
Okay, so first one is on board relationships and board onboarding and so on.
Okay.
Second one on actively listening to all members of the district. And the third one, I'm still working on this. Study ways the board can interpret and incorporate constituent comments, or, I don't think incorporate is the word I want, but I'm still looking for it here.
Or evaluate.
I mean, is it?
Use,
What,
I mean,
if we get so many concerns about some topic in the community, that we ourselves might not agree with, or not ourselves, but as a teachers and administrators, they like just a little tiny tweak.
yeah,
So the whole community we're seeing disagrees with them. Is there a way to bring that over here so that these people will incorporate those ideas, even though they might not? Do you see where I'm going?
yeah, kind of. To
Okay,
interpret
so,
and use constituent comments, I mean, we don't have to say, I mean, because the use for them might be very different from one set to another or whatever, I don't know.
Integrate?
Okay,
Can we integrate them into?
I'm much better with integrate than incorporate.
Is it a question about how we're, like, is it a system question?
It
Like,
could be anything.
like
so.
creating a system for
Oh.
sharing community input? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes, I
I'm
think
Well,
it is.
certainly, I
think it
think
is,
it would
you're right.
include a systemic piece there, but
Like how it gets done.
I like integrate. Do those 3, I
I'll
want
read
to,
them again. Well, not the first one.
not the first one,
I got the first one. What's the
Okay.
second one? I thought
Second
the
one
second
was
and the third one were all
actively
together.
listening to all portions of our district, or all members of our
I don't know
district.
if that has to be a goal, because we all do that already? Don't we all listen?
Well, we're not
listen?
getting to a lot of portions of our community.
Oh, so you wanna, not in the term of actively listening, but you wanna go out and
Yeah.
listen?
Yeah.
I think
And
we need
there's
to
a,
change
there's
that
a
then.
item D on our thing,
So you
works
wanna-
with
You wanna
those
say
kind-
we're going out to the community and listening. That's different than my interpretation of active listening. So maybe you should change the word active to
I'd
something
just
else.
drop it. I mean, really,
But you still wanna imply that we're trying to gather these comments. We're not just waiting for them to come to us, right? I think that's where active was going.
If nothing else, just make it known where they can give their voice, right? Like, so you may not be always actively
Yeah.
out in forums and communities, but make it really known, like really, let's make it a point to make it a goal that we let people know, here's where you can go, no matter who you are in this district, here's where you can voice your concerns or your questions, and have that be a place that then all of you can go to rather than it coming to you individually.
That's
I
the
like
point.
that.
Yes.
That's what I want,
Yes,
is I want one place where people can share their opinions and we can see that
yeah.
as a whole.
Is there a way to set up, or is this an open meeting? I think it would perhaps run into open meeting law issues, but a single email address for the board that you could all access and.
There's not, that I know of, we're all individual emails.
I
I
don't
know that you
think
do.
we
Is there a way to
could,
set that up legally? I don't.
Couldn't
that's
do
my-
that. but I
I'd
was
be
thinking-
worried about
I was
open meetings.
thinking more in terms of a place on the, like right now, we have a place for people to go and rate comments, but they don't know about it. But
Where is
that's
that?
That's where they can go.
District website.
It's on the district website.
Oh.
But that tends to only attract those people who have a complaint or whatever. We aren't getting just the general feeling of the community that way.
Well, and that's why I'm hearing like almost two separate issues. It's like, I'm hearing with the active listening, it seems like that's about being more inclusive of other voices. So having some sort of system or way of soliciting those voices. And then the separate issue I'm hearing is where is the common ground for sharing what we hear and having time to discuss it if
Yeah.
needed or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Would it be a, open meeting violation if we had a PUSD forum, I don't know what they're called because I'm not on them, not a blog, the
Discussion?
foodies, Prescott Foodies, you know, they have their little
Right.
thingy,
Yeah.
and everybody can comment on it, and you can join Prescott Foodies, and then you see all their comments, like a,
Like a discussion board.
yeah, I don't know what they're called, but, like a Prescott forum, Prescott School Forum, where everybody could join if they wanted to, and then they could post their comments, they could see everybody else's comments. And then if we looked at that, or if we joined that so we could see it as board members, would that be an open meeting?
No, it wouldn't be an open meeting violation.
Because
I
anybody
mean,
could access.
you know, we have Facebook and people can comment on that and we can all read that. So I don't think it would be an open meeting violation.
Okay,
Sometimes I
I'm
think-
not on any, so I'm like, I don't know
Yeah,
how
I
to
don't-
work, but I
I
could
don't do
join one,
Facebook.
you know, I'm like, I don't know.
Sometimes I think people think you aren't listening if you don't do what they suggest.
Right.
And,
So-
and so maybe the communication somehow needs to be, we hear you, we hear your concern, you know,
But we're not painting the bus green.
right, but we're
Yeah.
not gonna, I mean,
You know, I mean, you gotta throw PR into this. I mean, PR is a big part of my job. And I heard a very valued businessman in this area say, we're not doing Facebook anymore. I'm not suggesting we don't do Facebook. He said it's a detriment to our business. People don't go on there to tell people how great we are. They come and rip us, and it's
Yeah,
the
very
opposite of
true.
PR. So, and this is me, guys, but a lot of what I do is tending to the PR of the district. That doesn't mean I don't want to hear bad stuff. But I don't want to create forums where just the 10 nasty people can come and just rip us. Because unfortunately, then that's what everyone reads. But
So is there, on the one we have already at the district site, where they can make comments, are those available for the other people to read, like community members to read also? No, it's
those are
just
just
comes in,
emails
who
to let us
sees,
know their concerns, yeah.
who sees that?
So it's the webmaster.
Right.
And so what could be done though is that person could gather all those questions and comments and put them on a shared Google Doc and share it with you guys.
Right.
So that you're seeing what is being asked and addressed. And then that's something you guys can have a discussion about perhaps. But she could easily gather those and accumulate.
we could also easily create a board forum that just says, do you have something you want to say to our board as a whole? Here's a way to do it. And a lot of those people are emailing you right now, but you could have that board forum where they share their
We
thoughts.
all see it at once?
We could,
Because
yeah.
it's just a concept.
There's a few different formats we could do that on.
I also don't know if you noticed or were aware that, especially last spring, I would take information from all the emails I'd received and so on, and I would incorporate them into our discussion and respond
I know.
to, you know, those concerns.
I noticed since I've been here.
So,
yes.
yeah. So, I mean, sometimes that was how I at least was attempting to get that information about what
Mhm.
was going on out to the public, but.
I feel like you have more power to do that in a board meeting than I
But
do, but
you
unless
could-
it comes up in topic, I don't have a,
Yeah, but
Then-
when we were discussing COVID, or now when we're, you know, that's what most of the emails are on, and, you
And
know.
on that future agenda item, at the end of every board meeting, you can say, I'm hearing about this. And so, even if you're the only person that says that, Deb and I will get back to you when we're building the board agenda and say, okay, there's another board member that wants to have that also, so we're putting it on. You know what I mean?
mhm.
So, but I'm gonna go back to, like, I think we're talking, doing the work
We're
of the
not-
goal right
yeah,
now.
We're not
Because
writing
the one thing I'd suggest to people like, what are other districts doing around this? And maybe we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Maybe we can see like a forum that somebody already has and see how that's working. If we go down there looking for that idea and asking people we meet.
Are you comfortable if we say the 3 topics that, you know, board onboarding and so on, listening across and gathering information across the community, and gathering and integrating comments from the constituents? Are you comfortable if
if we don't have it down to the word, yeah.
if I bring it back to the next board meeting for approval? And I'll,
maybe Joe send it out to us and we can send him back. any
yeah, and if you
comments we
have,
in between.
yes, absolutely. And if you have suggestions for specific steps or activities or whatever that go with that goal, I would especially appreciate your input on that.
It seems
So-
like we have 2 out of 3 goals that are related to soliciting, listening, synthesizing public opinion,
I like that
which
word.
is, I don't know, when I'm looking at these self-evaluations and looking at the board responsibilities, that's just a component
Yes.
of what we're responsible for, and
To have two
And
or
to
three.
have 2 out of 3 goals around that, and the first goal being about kind of our own internal functioning, I think it would maybe be a good idea to have a goal related to the students. And maybe it's not the student achievement goal if we feel like that has been achieved and that's just kind of a part of the culture. But one of the things standing out to me, and I don't know if this is
Yep.
appropriate, but it seems like COVID and its effects on all the aspects was something that came up as an area for improvement. And if this is a 1-year goal, I don't know if that's something, or if there are other ideas.
Yeah,
Just to kind of not make ourselves too heavy on the public.
we need to remember that these are board goals, not district goals. Okay, this is for the operation of the board. And certainly keeping an eye on COVID is a major thing. I guess I don't personally probably feel like we need to actually write a goal for that, because, like, we're not gonna do that.
It's gonna be over soon.
Oh, thank
And
you.
Positive.
I'll hold you to that,
Okay,
Carl.
that's it. That's it. It's gonna be over soon.
So, But, you know, I certainly, I understand your point about not overloading on the communication, and we could probably combine those two in
Can
some.
we, kind of table this and go on to whatever else we have to do, and then maybe if we think of another goal, we could come back to
Come
it at
back.
the end?
We
Maybe?
can do that. Right under the goal areas to consider there, it says, discuss the board's role and what makes a good board member. When John left and Tim was interviewing people who had applied and brilliantly chose Sarah, I did send Tim a list of what I told him I thought was important with a board member. And I would just like to share those with you.
Oh, you didn't give them to us yet?
No, I didn't give them to you.
Okay.
These are just my
looking
own.
for them.
But it's a good example for the rest of us.
One, informed. And that means informed about whatever the issue is, informed about what's happening in the district, just really doing the background work. And that's what takes the most time in this job. Second, involved. We've taken on the liaison roles, so we are involved in that way. I think we're going to talk here a little bit, too, on how we can be involved in being representatives to the community and so forth. Third, a team player. And by that, I do not mean that we should all agree on everything. I happen to believe that differences of opinion are a good thing, but we need to, be able to work congenially with each other, but to remember that, let's see, and several of these kind of go with that. Item E on the board powers and responsibilities says to accept the will of the majority vote in all cases and give wholehearted support to the resulting policy. So even if you disagree, I mean, you don't have to say anything, but you don't go out. I will use an example. When we voted a year and a half ago to do the bond vote, override vote, sorry. I was the only one who voted against doing that because I simply felt it was not a good time for it. That passed, and I worked as hard as anyone on the board to try to get it passed. That's being a team player, you know. 4 is nonpartisan. I really make every effort to keep us from drifting one direction or the other. And 5, no agenda. And the more I thought about that, the more I thought maybe the answer instead of no agenda was the kids are the agenda.
Yeah, I like that better.
You know, they're the reason. So anyway, those were my thoughts about what makes a good board member. Other things, anybody?
What are we trying to talk about?
What makes a good board member? What should a good board member do or have?
I don't know, willingness to serve?
Yeah,
You know, you have to want to do it,
you do.
you know? I just. Why are we trying to talk about a good board member?
I did go.
Where are you on this agenda? Okay.
I'm on C under discuss board's role, what makes a good board member? See that?
Oh, I see it now.
I took this board roles and responsibilities, and I took the items that I had put down and I attached them to the items that were on here, and the only one that didn't match up with one of the things I said was to accept the responsibility for confidentiality. And that's maybe being a good team member, I don't know.
Jeff, I'm wondering if, like, I appreciate having a refresher for what your responsibilities are, but maybe the discussion is around which of these do the board members find challenging for themselves?
Good question. Are there things there that,
Who did we get these from? Who's BAA? BBA?
That's out of our policy manual.
Standing for BBA.
that's just the letter, each policy has letters to identify it.
Okay, so this is in that big book?
No,
Like,
it's
who
in
wrote
our
it?
policy manual.
Who wrote it to begin with? That's all I'm asking. I just wanted to know who wrote it.
So most of our policy comes from the ASBA legal team. We'll see, like on September 7th, we'll see a big policy revision with like 25, 30 policies on it. Then
So
that
this
comes
is
to the
pretty
board.
much anybody that's pretty much universal
Probably,
throughout the state?
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
most school districts in the state have that same policy.
Okay.
And they can adapt those,
You can adapt it,
correct?
yes.
Yes.
So some districts may have different.
But
Yeah,
that's probably what they would call the boilerplate. They came from ASBA with their team of attorneys.
And do you know if we
Drafting it.
adapted it any, or is this just the
That,
original?
I don't think that's been adapted. It should say on there.
If it has a copyright symbol on it, it means, do you see up at the
Yeah.
top?
Yeah, it
Little
has.
C?
So,
That means we just
We didn't
adopted
change
it
it?
as is.
Yeah.
It's just based on all the laws that get passed by the
Yeah,
legislature.
I see where they noted the laws.
Yeah.
I got it.
yeah.
No, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but talking about, what makes a good board member. I had a supervisor who one time asked me, what do you, list these three things in the order that they are important to you as an employee of this institution. They said the students, the institution, and your coworkers. And of course, he would say, I don't have anything in mind, just tell me what you think. But of course, he did have something in mind. But, I came out as a student affairs professional and said, well, the students obviously are first, and then the institution would be second, and then my coworkers are third, and then myself fourth, if that was even one of them. And his view was, number one is the institution. You're employed by the institution. You have a duty to them. The students will come and go. Your coworkers, you may have a longer work time with them. You have a responsibility to them. The students, you certainly have a responsibility to. But again, they will come and go, and the needs of the students will remain the same. So that is an important thing. But you first represent the institution. And that was really eye-opening to me. And, I think as we look at what makes a good board member, I think that's something I try to keep in mind, is that we're representing the Prescott Unified School District. And that includes employees, that includes staff, it includes students, of course. It includes parents and retirees in the district. So there's a whole lot more than just what we have to do for every child every day, which we try to do. But that involves supporting bus drivers, that involves supporting school secretaries, teachers, administrators,
Nurses.
other board members, nurses, all of those people. So I think that's something I would like to see, is that a board member has that bigger picture in mind. We all want the students to be successful and great, and our success in helping them get to walk across that stage on the field in May is what we should be there for. But we don't get there without all those other pieces. And so that's what I'd like to see. I think we have to have that bigger picture in mind.
I respectfully kind of disagree. I don't know, maybe I am totally old-fashioned, but my view is the board was set up to represent the community. the community's ideas. The superintendent and all the staff were set up to represent the students. We're all trying to educate them, but our responsibility is more towards the community. I could be totally wrong.
What does your oath say that you say when you get up and you accept the position?
I've been thinking about this a lot too.
Yeah.
That you'll support the laws of the state of Arizona and the Constitution. And so that's something that you also have to keep in mind. I mean, if I vote for something that is in direct violation of a current law in the state, am I fit to serve as a board member? Because I've violated my oath of office.
I don't know, I just thought that that's why boards were set up to begin with, like going back, way back in history, that the school districts were set up to do this half, and then the board was like a supervisory, not just to make sure that the community was agreeing with what was going on, but that could be really old-fashioned, so.
That's another piece that board training would help you clarify in your mind
Mhm.
exactly what it's for, where it came from and whatnot. I'm confident there's direct training related to that you could make yourself.
Well, I mean, I think state law is a big piece of this. I mean, that's who's in charge of education, and I'm not saying this about Prescott, but you might have a community that doesn't support those state laws, but I think a governing board has to uphold the state laws and make sure that the schools are implementing those, you know. Which is not very sweet for every child every
So-
day, but it, you know.
But it
And
is
there
a-
are more policies besides this one. We just pulled this one because it was directly about what
Yeah.
we're talking about today, but there are lots of policies about your role, my role, the staff's role, that kind of stuff. And we can bring those up too, to study a little bit more.
Yeah, I just think it's a whole lot bigger role than one or two of those items that we represent. I mean, because we have I don't know if it's true, Brian, you can tell me if this is the wrong choice of words, but we have a fiduciary responsibility to this district. So what we do is in the best interest of the district, not in the best interest of any constituent or any other person. It's in the best
Wait,
interest of this
yeah,
district.
Who's your district? Is your district the students in the district, or is your district everybody who lives in this district?
It's all of that.
So then the fiduciary would be almost towards the community as a whole.
Oh,
and
of
you just
course.
I thought you just excluded them.
No, I don't,
Okay.
I didn't intend to do that at all, no.
Okay.
You know,
I
I
gotcha.
think I said that
Good.
it included all of those members of the community.
Okay, good.
All right, some of the other things that were listed there under, you know, board's role. A, support of the strategic plan. I mean, to me, that just goes without saying. So, the ASBA public participation, the sheet that you got on public participation at governing board meetings. Our current board policy calls for a limited call to the public. And that means that the public will be able to come and speak to any item that is on the voting agenda for that meeting. The alternative that some districts use is an open call, where anybody can get up and talk to us about anything that they wish. I'm going to tell you that I'm a little nervous about that, because
It sounds a little chaotic.
well, not only chaotic, but you could have someone with a particular bent who came every single month to the meeting to say basically the same thing. And so I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about,
Yeah, definitely.
I'm big on freedom of speech, but, so,
And is it our option to, like, before, when we put out the call, or we'll put out
The
the
agenda,
agenda or
yeah.
whatever, could we do different ones, like, I don't know, twice a year have an open meeting and once a year, I don't know. I mean, do we have an option to go back and forth? That's all I'm asking.
Yep.
Between
Okay.
open and,
You'd have
Limit the
to,
third one, both limited and open?
yeah.
yeah, you'd have to make that decision in a board meeting and say, that could be part of your goal to hear more from the public.
Like every January we have
Yeah.
an open meeting, or,
Or
something.
you could say, we would like to open this meeting for comments on X topic.
That kind of sounds limited, but okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha. I got you. I just wanted to know if we could
Yeah.
flip-flop back and forth.
yeah,
Okay, that's all.
so.
I think a part of this, though, too, is the concept that you talked about of a clear system of how can community communicate to the board. So, if we are able to clearly say, this is how you can provide input, maybe you don't need that open call where they're
Yeah,
at a board meeting, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. And it would be really, really nice if they had a venue, so then they wouldn't all come and sit in the board meeting and
Well-
be like disappointed because they couldn't say anything that they wanted to say.
Yes, yes.
well, that was why we switched the one meeting to the auditorium, so there was room for everybody, and
Okay,
So-
just a question.
Interesting history, I mean, there hasn't been an open call in Prescott for at least 30 years. And just think about this for a second, there was no email then. And so, I mean, we're getting a lot of information on email. And I'll tell you, before
Yeah.
COVID, if a board member got 2 or 3 or 4 emails a year,
that was
about
about
what
it.
it was.
I mean, we just
So
didn't
this is a
get
different time for
emails.
sure, but there's no doubt in my mind that this board is hearing our community. And that there is a place for them to speak to you, and you guys are hearing it. So I'm just saying that email is, it's definitely a place where people can share, and I know that you all are listening to it. You don't have to respond, we've talked about that, whether you do or not, that's up to you. But you are listening to a lot of information.
Okay, continue.
Okay, just a couple other things I'd like to point out about speaking at board meetings. We can take comments directly, or we could require them to be in writing and have Sarah read them to us. I mean, if there were a reason that we felt we needed to do that. Also, we get to set the amount of time speakers get to speak. And frankly, I get to do that. Right now, we operate pretty much on a 2-minute limit. We also could set a total time limit. If we knew there were gonna be, hundreds of people, and we said, we're gonna limit the total comment period to an hour or something, we have the right to do that as well. So, also, just FYI, boards are required to make our meetings observable to the public. That's why we're live streaming and the door is unlocked and all that. But there is no legal requirement to offer public participation. So we would never have to do that. I think that would be a poor choice, but legally, it's not required.
I just have one question about people speaking.
Yeah.
I think it's very hard to make, well, I would like to change this. This is my proposal. I would like to change this. Right at the moment, if there's an agenda item, the people need to speak before the agenda item is presented. And sometimes when the presenter presents whatever it is, it answers their questions and then they don't need to speak anymore. So why can't we have them speak after the agenda item is discussed? That's all it is. I would like to see them discussed after. There's probably some good reason why not to, but.
I have a thought about it, is when they speak after the agenda item, then it becomes more of a, like, arguing and refuting what has been presented and talked about, rather than having them come up beforehand and say, on this agenda item, these are my concerns, this is what I would like you to look at, this is why I'm concerned about it. You know, they present their thoughts in a kind of a positive way, whereas if you wait until after the discussion, then they're gonna be like, well, what you guys didn't consider is you needed, you know,
Right.
and I just feel like they need to formulate their thoughts about the agenda item, present it to you to consider as you discuss it. That's, because I've been thinking about this. I know it's frustrating for them because sometimes we already were gonna talk about what they mentioned. So then it's like you're giving them an opportunity to sit there and think of other things that they wanna protest, or, you know what I
Well, we
mean?
only give them 2 minutes, so, you know.
Well, it's a best practice for those reasons, and some other board and some other superintendent sat with an attorney, and that's what they came up with. But you can change it.
Can I share what we do on the city level and how it works? So we do exactly what Cara suggests. The agenda item comes up, we typically have our professional staff come and make a presentation to us about it, which not only informs us, we typically have done our homework. We're not there and just showing up and saying, gee, I don't know what's going on with this. We do our homework and we come. The staff informs us further, and then at the same time is able to inform the public about the parameters of what we're talking about. And then we do open it up to public comment afterwards, as Cara is suggesting. Marty's right as well. Sometimes that, just if somebody was a little irked about it, it just adds fuel to their fire. And you didn't say this and whatnot. There's a little bit of that, but it does give the opportunity for the public to provide more informed comment about it. They know what the situation is. They didn't just see an agenda item. It says, whatever, water service to this place. They know exactly what we're talking about, and then they can make a little bit more informed and reasonable comments about it to us. And that's not the end of things. We don't. Then there's still discussion among the city
board.
council about that, and we can ask our professional staff more about what we just heard from this member of the public if we want, and then we make our decision. Marty's not wrong. It does lead to a little bit more, I think, contentious comment than it might otherwise, but it informs us better as a city council as we make decisions, is my thought on that.
Can we maybe mull it all over and maybe put it on as a voting item later on?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Also, just a couple other things that were in this section of the materials, mostly for you, Sarah, so that you are aware, when public members are speaking to us and we are not allowed to respond to them. So,
And
don't.
can I briefly address how we do that on city council? Same thing, we don't address the public directly, but sometimes somebody brings something up and they just drop something in a public meeting that's being live streamed, there's people there, and give a misimpression of what's going on. And many times the mayor or another city council member will ask our professional staff, can you comment on that directly, the professional staff? We just heard that nobody in town ever turns the water on after 10 p.m. Is that what something like that?
Right.
And that allows us to clarify and indirectly respond to the public without violating those same types of open meeting laws that we have. And it's not every time somebody says something, we say, well, respond to that person, I respond. But occasionally people say something that we feel like is worth addressing or clarifying, and we ask our professional staff to do that. And
Which
you
I've seen our
perhaps
school
do the
board
same.
do that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the
After they're done
superintendent can
speaking.
respond, the board can ask the superintendent to respond. And typically, I've seen that if there's a mistruth told, or misinformation, and we're able to easily clarify that with the actual fact.
Or questions that people ask in their comment. Yep.
The last thing in this particular segment that I wanted to touch on was the last item there that says, remember that self-care is a leadership decision. Please, this has been a stressful year, no question about it. Please take care of yourselves. Give yourselves time off. I spent last week up north, went up for my father's much-delayed memorial service. I did not respond to any of my emails during that time. I just said, you know, I need this time for me. I responded when I got back, but, you know, and each of you knows yourself and knows what you need to take care of yourself. So this is just my personal plea to please take care of yourselves. I don't want to lose any of you.
Yes, you skipped agenda items.
It's on there.
I know, but we didn't do active listening and awareness of who's present.
Those were in the handout. Do you want to talk about them? We would certainly may.
Oh. I just thought we were going over it. You gave us these papers.
Yeah, if you would like to discuss active listening or awareness of who is present or who is not, they're on the agenda and we certainly can discuss them.
No, I wanted to know who wrote this, utilize active listening strategies.
These things were
Right
part
out
of an
ASBA.
ASBA handout.
Okay. Because I can tell you right now, you're gonna get a lot of kickback and, community opposition to educational equity together. So,
Wouldn't want equity.
yeah, so. On,
And-
listening. Resist the urge to lump those critical of educational equity together, and this was educational equity, work, access to speak, understand the perspectives of others. So right at the moment, in this politically diverse, world we are living in, we're gonna see it as a board, all the things with CRT and equity and, it's gonna be a mess. You think COVID was a mess? It's gonna be a worse mess.
I saw that posting too.
So I just oppose that the wording is even in here for us. I love that little ad, the little cartoon. This is my equity one. The little cartoon has a tall man, the short man, the guy in the wheelchair. They're all trying to look over the fence, and equality gives them all a block, you know? And then equity gives the tall man nothing, and the guy a block, and the wheelchair guy 2 blocks, and now they can all see the ball game. But my little quip to it is, you know, the tall guy wanted to see the ball game because he could see the ball game. Short guy didn't know what was over the fence, and he really thought it was a construction zone, so he wanted to see trucks, and he got to see it, and he's like, I don't want to watch a ball game. And the person on the wheelchair, he was just waiting for the other 2 guys to get out of the way. He wanted to go past on the sidewalk. So it's like equity of outcome. Maybe they didn't all want to see the ball game. So we have to like know what they want as their outcome. Like, I'm all for getting each individual their outcome and having everybody be in their outcome, but we can't say that everybody has to have the same outcome. Like, theirs has to be all the same. Anyways, never mind. I'm gonna slouch down in my chair. Anyways,
It's okay.
It's an
I was a little
interesting
offended by this question.
No, it's an interesting concept. I guess my question would be, you know, are you saying that not everyone would want to graduate high school?
Yeah.
And so how would we,
I've heard
How
kids,
would we
they don't want to graduate
determine-
high school, they just want to go get a job. So, I mean, our goal can be that everybody graduates from high school,
yeah,
but to lower our standards so that everyone does graduate from high school is not fair to everyone else.
but what about, you know, helping those
Who need
that-
extra
to
help.
raise,
Yeah,
you
we
know,
can help
instead
them,
of,
but
instead
if
of lowering?
if they don't especially, some kids at their age don't feel that education is important. So obviously, we haven't stressed it enough. That could be something in the minor grades, that we haven't stressed that education is important to get for the end goal. But I have lots of kids that, you know, come in and want a job, and they're like, I just want a job. Education is not important to me right now. Later on, they'll be like, education is important. I'll go back to community college, I'll get my GED, I'll do this, I'll do that, and I'll do fantastic things. But just pushing them all in the same, and maybe it's asking a question, maybe we could have different graduation requirements, you know, maybe music people could have, you know, more music and less math. I don't know what the answer is.
Those are state
It's just that-
requirements.
Definitely.
I think the issue is
but,
with
yeah.
the issue is with the comic, because equity can't be summarized with a strip, an image like that, you know? You bring up fair points that comic doesn't give any context for what is in the characters' heads, or who's working with them, or things like that. So I think the whole conversation is just,
It's,
equity is a way bigger topic.
Equity is like a tree.
That's,
like, they can all have branches, and all of these are equal outcomes, equity.
Cara,
but it's
is,
a-
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is the controversy, I'm just trying to understand a little more. Do you think the controversy is that equity is related to CRT? Like that's considered kind of equivalent by
It will
many
be.
of our public?
It will be,
So maybe the word equity is not what we want to
that's what I'm getting at.
use, yeah.
Equity is a,
It feels like
it's
a
a touch
controversial.
word right at the
Yes,
moment,
yes.
that we're not gonna,
And we
wanna
know
keep
what it
spitting
means,
at
we
people.
know what it means in a broader sense, but maybe, it's sort of like when people just, any mean behavior is called bullying. That's bullying, that's bullying, that's bullying. And it's really just mean behavior, but it's become this, equity's become this word that kind of means racial equality or something like that.
maybe not racial, but it tends to have a connotation that we're gonna lower the standards so that
Okay.
everyone can
I see,
have the equal outcome.
I see.
Instead of raising the standards and raising these people up, which is what we want to do. But, yeah, it has that connotation, if you say. So I just think as a school district, maybe if we keep that word and some other touch words, out of our presentations, that
Yeah.
we'll find it easier to get through the next 2 years, because it's gonna be worse than COVID.
Well, and I read the intent of what's written here in the board agenda is exactly what you're saying. It's this resist the urge to lump those critical of educational equity together and dismiss their concerns. Instead, listen to them
Okay.
and work through them. You know, boards across Arizona, I mean, this is all over the newspaper, are having people scream and yell in their meetings, and it's talking about how we as a board, if that happens to us, would address people that are using bigoted or racist speech or that type of thing. And also how to just be open-minded to hear their concerns and talk through those concerns. So I think this is just saying what you're saying. People are gonna come talk to us about this. And of course, ASBA is giving people ways to help have that discussion, but you know, it's not an agenda item today, but I can tell you, critical race theory is not a curriculum,
It is not.
and it's not part of the state standards, and it's not a part of what we do in Prescott Unified School District. It's a piece of a college
Law school
law school
class.
course,
It's
so.
a theory that's been around for 40 years.
Right, but the reality is people are creating their own definition for it and coming to public meetings like this and creating intense issues about, you know, what we are and aren't doing. So, you know, we're not surprised that conversation's gonna come up. It's national rhetoric, and so we're probably ready to have that discussion if there is a venue in here or if we put an agenda item on. But again, it's not part of what we do.
I can appreciate the fact that we don't want to use a word that's emotionally charged, but
Yep.
the word equity is, you know, such a great word. It has become something to other people, but I think we always have to take into context where it's being used. And in context here, it's saying just exactly what Carl was saying. It is that we're going to be open to everybody's opinions and that we're going to make sure that we're not biased and that we're not being discriminatory in any way. So I think as a district, we should always make sure that we're using it correctly in context of what's being said, but we don't need to avoid the word altogether because that's ridiculous, that we're now going to eliminate that from our vocabulary because some people attach a negative meaning to it. I feel strongly that we need to be able to speak freely and use our amendments.
Well, I think we know, though, that definitions of words change over time
Sure.
in the common public. And so as academics, we may know what equity means, but maybe not everyone. So is there maybe a synonym that is less charged that could be used?
Fairness, until somebody co-opts that as well, we can't use that.
I mean, there are words that we now avoid because of a negative connotation.
Okay.
One of the best ways I think to address any type of issue like this, especially when someone's using rhetoric or they're creating their own definition for it, is just to simply ask them to define what they mean when they're saying equity or when they're
That's a
saying
good idea.
critical race theory. Because right now, what I'm finding is when you ask that question, almost every time you get a different definition.
So, all right. The next item, the bottom item on the first page was just the ASBA calendar of events. There were several things that I would just point out on that. On October 19th is the county meeting where the boards from across Pike County get together. It doesn't say where it will be. I will be out of town that day, so I won't be at that one,
Deb, I
but
think it's going to be online.
Okay.
Yeah.
virtual,
Is that
okay.
an all-day event?
No, no. It usually starts about 4:30 or 5.
Yeah. It used to be a dinner that we
yeah.
were all able to attend, and so hopefully it'll get back to that.
Yeah. And then the annual conference that's in Phoenix, probably in December, though that could be virtual as well. It was last year. Then in the winter, there is the Bolts sessions, and they're located in 3 different places. And that's board operations and leadership training. That's a 1-day event. They may do that online again as well. And then next June, the Summer Leadership Institute that is held in Flagstaff. It is certainly possible for you to bring your spouses with you for those
And
events.
these, the district pays for if we choose to attend, correct?
Yep.
Just in case all of you guys didn't know that. Just in case you didn't know that.
Okay. Moving on to section D, and we've talked about this, but we've never really nailed anything down on this. What can board members do to enhance district success? And we've talked about attending chamber mixers, speaking for service organizations, site council meetings, other ideas, and so on. First of all, any other ideas for ways that we can reach out to the community? This kind of goes with that goal of reaching out to gather information or to communicate with our district.
We had discussed at one point maybe having one of our meetings held like at the high school as a, to draw more people in.
Yeah, we have one of them scheduled there,
October 5th.
October,
Okay,
PHS.
okay.
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Great. And is that gonna be on a different time, or is it still the evening?
Still evening.
Okay. I had thought we had talked even about having one with the students during the school day,
Yeah.
if, as an assembly that students
Yeah.
might be able to attend or something, but
I'd love
I
it.
don't know if that would be.
We'd have to just have a voting item, because I think at the beginning of the year, you all vote for your times and all that, but
Uh-huh.
you just put an agenda item to change it for that date.
Okay.
Staff would probably love that.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, staff would probably like to have it during the workday.
Anybody have any other ideas for ways that we can reach out to the community?
One thing that I saw as I was searching ways that you guys can engage is office hours. That board members would have office hours, and the public would know about that. and the staff would know about that, so that if they wanted to go and have a discussion, they would know when and how they could do
Yeah.
that.
Huh. That's interesting. Thank you, Kelly.
It works very well, but it's very time consuming because everybody knows I'm at the donut shops. Oh my gosh. Drive-through line gets backed up.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
But-
but
You
they
have to
do
buy,
love to come
you
and
have to
talk.
buy first, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
love
Then
to
you get
come and
advice.
talk, I can tell you that.
It seems like one of the challenges that has been going on for decades is just how to hear voices of people that are not traditionally sharing their voices in pretty traditional forums, whether it's coming to a meeting or being actively in the school. Even the service organizations is a certain demographic, and I don't know that I have solutions. I do know that one direction to look in is just going to people rather than having them come to you. And so my eyes are around the service organizations, but I wonder if that could be expanded to include other groups of folks that I don't know, don't
Yeah.
necessarily know that a school board exists or
Mm-hmm.
So I like these, the chamber and the chamber mixer's not as hard to get into those. But speaking for service organizations, they have their calendars, like, we need somebody to like apply, like, you know, say, oh, we would like to have somebody come speak to your thing, and then they put you on a date, you know, for
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
5 months in the future. It's like, it's not easy for, I guess, us as board members to,
Mhm.
like, do you want us all going out and, you know, all 10 of us
Mm.
ask the so-and-so to get on the venue? It's just harder to ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of,
Because it's-
typically they ask us.
Yeah,
but-
it's hard, you know, to get, because they schedule them out so far, but,
Yeah.
if we had one, Sarah, if you wanted to like reach out to the different organizations and see if they would like somebody to go speak, and then see who might be available, that would be like easier for us than to try and do it on our own. I don't know.
I could do a session for the OLLI program. Yeah, by college. I'm now the president of the governing council.
You're
I've really
piling it
tried to
on,
get
Deb.
out of it.
Double president.
Her drive-through gets so backed up.
So, anyway, I have connections there.
Would that be something that, just kind of out of the box here, but would there be a way to do an OLLI class that is your local school board, here's what we do? And, you know, maybe it's a 3-week class or something, and we could
That's what I
all-
was thinking of doing.
Yeah, we could all
Yeah.
have an opportunity.
Let's
to
make it
come
a
in.
one-night class, and you might get more
Well,
attendance.
not all of us had to be there every time, but
Like one at a time.
each of us could go to a different class and
I meant
say,
for the people who are attending, like,
oh,
they're not gonna
oh.
sign up for 3 weeks, no.
Well, they do, they do.
Classes 3 weeks.
No, they can be anywhere from a 1 time to 6
Yeah.
weeks.
I did a beer tasting class that was like 5 weeks, so. through all
Yeah,
that.
I just learned about that program.
Yeah.
We were at a function and they came and spoke, otherwise I
Yeah.
had no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Site council meetings, good. I have been, telling, constituents and concerned people, that might be a better venue for them to go and be able to speak than coming to the board meetings. So I've
Yeah.
been pushing them, and pushing them to site council meetings. You might wanna, like, tell those principals, like,
Heads up.
yeah, heads up. So anyways, I told them that would be an easier venue for them to
Yeah.
consume their ideas about that school or what's happening. So
Okay.
just heads up. Joe, sorry.
No, I think it,
I
Yeah,
thought that's
we-
what they
we-
were kinda there for.
we learned
so-
some lessons over the last year on communicating in broad general ways about the whole district, and then getting communicated back in broad general ways, where it's not really addressing the issues, because the issues are with their children at the school, and so we even have policy, we all know that that's solved best at the level closest to the classroom, and so I
Can
think
we,
that's
Can we advertise those a little bit better, Nancy? Site council meetings?
They are posted as
They are
open
posted.
meeting.
Yeah. And the schools send them out to,
Yeah, so
Their
I've been telling
families.
just, you know, pay attention to the emails.
Yeah.
and- Yeah. And what are they, once a quarter,
Well,
every 2 months, isn't
Monthly,
it mandated?
monthly.
No,
And
they're
what I told them was that it would be nice if the liaison could plan to attend, say, the first one of the year and the last one of the year, or, you know, not every month, but. Would it be helpful if, for our next meeting, I put together kind of a calendar sign-up sheet where people could indicate events or whatever that they would be willing and or able to attend? Otherwise, if we don't have some means to say, okay, I will do this,
Yeah,
nothing happens.
Could we send you maybe some organizations or opportunities?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, if you think of other organizations or opportunities for us to visit, yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Okay, it's time for our favorite topic.
Sorry, I've been in and out and doing
It's okay.
emails, and that's what I'm working on, is our favorite topic.
no rapid tests during the board meeting then?
Well, I scheduled one.
Oh, okay.
So I'll just talk a little and then let you guys ask questions. But, you know, we brought the kiddos back and, you know, we brought the virus back into our schools, and we've been working hard to help families know when positive students need to stay home and contact tracing kiddos that they've been around. We are very thankful that the county has kind of helped us. You know, we want healthy kids in school. So it's really, you know, it's hard to send kids that aren't sick home and for 7 to 10 days, depending on what they want to do. So we've really been working with the county to try to loosen that up and kind of look at our own systems of what we can do. One thing the county told us is if someone has had COVID in the past, they more than likely have enough antibodies to fight the virus. And so, you know, we could excuse them from quarantine. We have seen a couple reinfections. So what we do is we excuse them from quarantine, but we ask families to really monitor for symptoms. If a student is vaccinated, staff or student is vaccinated, they don't have to quarantine. If both parties, the positive and the close contact, are wearing a mask, then you don't have to quarantine per CDC. We're very happy the county has lightened up on the type of testing in order for kids to come back early. It was just a PCR test, and now they're allowing the rapid antigen test, which is, the PCR was taking 3 to 5 days, and there's a shortage of them. So that has been wonderful that we can do the rapid test to get them back in school as soon as possible. So we're really working with families. Sometimes they say, yes, we had COVID, but we didn't get a test result. So we kind of talk through the circumstances of that. Because if one is positive and everyone gets the same symptoms and is sick in the household, you don't go and get them all tested. You pretty much assume they had COVID. So I will tell you, most families, 90% of families have been cooperative. They call, the Delta variant is really presenting as a cold or allergies, and they will call us and say, my kid has the sniffles and this is what's happening, what should we do? Say if the nurses are doing an amazing job of trying to help keep healthy kids in school. So if a student normally gets allergies and it's really presenting as allergies, then the nurse will say, stay home for a day or two. If symptoms don't change or they get better, bring them on back. If they change, let's get them tested. Let's figure out what's going on. Very happy that Joe was able to connect with Leslie at the county to set up these drop-in testing sites at Mile High. So 3 days a week now we have drop-in testing sites, and Wednesday was the first day. 70 people got tested, 8 were positive. Those were 8 kiddos that we wouldn't have known were positive. You know, a couple were asymptomatic, like brother was sick, so they got him tested, but then sister was positive too. Today was the second one. I haven't heard the final numbers because it was this morning at 8, but I can tell you we have 3 principals are reporting 3 students that have called the school and said, we just got tested and we're positive. But on the other side, I'm getting emails from families saying, I just got tested, it's the 6th day of quarantine, and it was negative, so can we come back on Monday? So these testing sites have been amazing because they're bringing kids back sooner and they're helping to identify positive kiddos.
Will we be able to continue those, or is it just these 3 that are already scheduled?
No, it's they're gonna support it
Great.
indefinitely, or at least until we get to the point where we don't need, 70 on Wednesday was a lot. And Jeanette at Mile High said there was a ton of parents waiting this morning. They were late setting up, so, till the demand.
Till it goes down. yeah.
Till the demand decreases. The dashboard, will you pull that up?
Marty, can I ask where we advertise these testing sites?
The principals have been advertising to families, and then myself and the nurses let families know if they want to get released from quarantine, what day to get tested, and that they can drop in at Mile High. So
Did teachers learn about it?
I don't know.
I don't,
Principals have been communicating it to families.
I've been seeing emails
Yeah.
from principals to their staffs.
Is it just for students and staff?
So this is the great thing, is it's for really students, staff, and families of students and staff. We're not advertising it on Facebook as like a public, because they're
that would be
already
too.
feeling a little overwhelmed. But, you know, if dad wants to get tested too, dad can get tested.
Or board members.
But
I got tested this week.
if someone from the community showed up, or they're not gonna just send them away, you know, if you have somebody walking
That
in.
would be bad.
Yeah, I think
PR.
we would still do that, right?
Yeah,
Okay, that's weird.
we're just not
Let's
advertising it for
Yeah.
capacity
Right.
issues.
PUSD total.
The health department has been awesome to work with, and, always. Last year, they maybe didn't have the capacity so much. We were kind of on our own with that, but we also didn't have the bulk that we're dealing with now in terms of contact tracing, So I want to just speak to capacity for a minute. Contact tracing super hard on principals and their staff and nurses. Not to mention, calling for quarantine is one of the least unpleasant things that you'll ever do in your career as an administrator. So, not too fun with that, but folks are doing a great job with it. Marty's doing a great job with them. Alexa also. Alexa's out of town right now, that's why she's not here. But and then we're seeing this in the area for sure and across the state. But in terms of capacity with transportation, we started 10 bus drivers down. We just nobody can find bus drivers. We're not able to hire them, and so then we have people sick that are bus drivers too. And so I know a neighboring district had to close a route last week. We have not had to do that. We hope not to do that, but they just didn't have enough drivers, and they had to tell their parents, you're gonna have to transport them until we can get our driver back. So that's a fear, but it's a reality that we're facing. And then the other piece too is like, in departments like IT right now, we have people sick in there, and you'll probably see an agenda item coming to you later, because we just lost another staff member that had only been with us for to another job that paid higher. And I'm fearing telling teachers, I know you were 200 tickets behind in getting your technology fixed, but it's not coming fast because we don't have the staff. So again, we have some staffing issues that we're going to probably be bringing to the board in the future, but some of that's COVID related. It's, we have people sick, and we just don't have the people who can do that work right now. So especially those small departments like IT, you get 2 or 3 people out and you're shut down.
So I did update the dashboard last night, and we added this total page. And you can see the dates that we update the dashboard. So it hit us pretty quickly right away. And so
Are those week totals, or is that the total from the beginning of the year, the 62, say?
that is current. So here, let me point. So this
Vertically
is,
isolated, okay.
as of last night, we have 62 current active positive cases in our
Okay.
district. We have 88 who are now resolved. So they had COVID, but they're now,
And those two numbers are not linked. So
No.
if you're in this
No, they're
column,
not
you're
linked.
not in that column.
They're
But when
correct.
you move from that column,
this
you'll get.
column will always increase because we're just adding our resolved cases. So this tells you kind of the total positive we've had in the district since we've started. But this is current active positives. This is current number of quarantined kids.
Does that include the positives?
No.
Okay.
So the 62 isn't
These
in
guys
there?
are isolating. When you're
Oh,
positive, it's called
okay.
isolation.
Okay,
When you're quarantining because of close contact, you're in this column.
okay.
So we have about 200 kiddos in quarantine right now.
That says total number, so that's adding up?
Total number
Current,
of students and
Current.
staff
Oh,
currently
currently,
quarantined.
gotcha. I can't read and I can't see.
Transmissions we'll talk about in a minute, and this is total staff and students. So if we look at PHS, PHS is, I think today alone I've gotten 5 new positive cases for PHS. They travel around, they're out there, they're exposed to more people, and they transmit like adults. Little kids don't transmit as much as big kids
They hang out together
do.
outside of school more than younger kids.
So, currently we have 26 plus the 5 that came in today that we'll show later. 28 resolved cases, currently 71 quarantined. So we had this grand idea that we would be able to track transmission at school, and the way we would kind of track it is if a kiddo had been a close contact and then became positive and the parents told us that they really hadn't been exposed anywhere else, maybe the parents are vaccinated and they're like, this is the only place they could have got it was school, is we'd call it kind of a presumptive transmission at school. That was a grand dream, but we just don't have the capacity to follow up with each parent and track where were they, could this have been a school transmission. But what we are seeing is close contacts become positive. Not all of them, but we are seeing kiddos we've quarantined then do become positive. And so-
Do you know like numbers? Is it a percentage, like 50%, 75%?
No, I
10%?
would, if you held my feet to the fire and asked me to guess a number, I'd say 20 to 25. But we just could not track that. Mile High blew up initially. It's kind of calming down a little bit, I would say.
It's,
Granite Mountain had a delayed blow up. Teresa had a couple weeks of calmness, and then hers kind of has blown up last week and this week. Taylor Hicks and Lincoln are I don't want to jinx anything.
Yeah.
I'm not superstitious, but I have to do this.
All right, skip over that.
Okay, Lincoln and Taylor Hicks. And this includes staff. This doesn't, we put staff in there. AJ had, it's kind of, you can see where they had a situation. They had 2 classrooms where there was something going on in that classroom. They were, we were getting several positives in 2 classrooms. They had so many kiddos quarantined that one of them started teaching virtually to all the quarantined kiddos, and then anyone who could still come to school who wasn't quarantined went to another live classroom teacher for live instruction. So we are trying to adapt as we can. DG, I don't know what happened to the data. I probably messed up something, but they haven't had anything yet, so I need to go fix that. And then there's another tab that is other, which is like transportation, IT, district office, ESS. And so those have just been kind of trickling in, and you don't see many many quarantined with that because, you know, they're typically not around students. So that's the dashboard. We have promised in our notes we'll update it at least weekly. We've been updating it more frequently just because parents want to know. I get emails like, when's the dashboard going to be updated? I'm getting letters that, you know, there's quarantining at my school. And so we're trying to do it every 3 or 4 days.
Thank you.
We're extra
Very
grateful
informative.
for the health and safety coordinator position that you all approved 2 years ago, especially when she's been gone.
Yeah.
And I want,
Normally this would be Alexa presenting all
Yeah.
this.
I want
but I'm
to
just
thank
covering.
Marty for being the assistant superintendent and the health and safety director.
Thank you for all the extra work, Marty.
She's been
Sure.
working day and night. And I also want to point out that I know that some of the neighboring districts are now hiring health and safety directors because they have that need and they've seen how successful it's been for us.
Well, Carol at the county told John Potas that he needs an Alexa,
Yep. And they posted it.
and they did.
Yep.
I just have 2 more quick things, is we have hired some people to do quarantine support for students at home to help them with their academics. Our instructional coaches have kind of shifted their duties to support students at home with getting on their Google Classroom, making sure they have a Chromebook, helping them with questions, you know, getting them food if they need food. So and I have seen less complaints from parents about my kiddo has nothing to do at home while they're quarantining. So I think that's working. So thank you, Kelly, and the coaches for shifting on that. And the last thing is I'm trying to build, when Alexa comes back, she doesn't know I'm gonna dump this on her plate, but we're trying to build some capacity for the nurses. I mean, we are so lucky that we have these nurses and they're so fabulous and the parents know it. And so they're calling them every single day with questions. You know, my kiddo has the sniffles, my husband tested positive, what do we do? You know, and each phone call is, you know, a good 15 minutes. And when they have 4 or 5 kids in our district, usually they send me an email and say, I can't do this one, can you call? I'm trying to set up kind of a hotline, phone bank type of thing with volunteers, retired nurses, where they could call and take it off the nurse's plate. And we've been advertising the county hotline, please call the county hotline. But if we could have someone in our school district who can actually look in Power School, see what classes they're in, help them navigate quarantining and all that, I think that our nurses would really appreciate it. They're pretty overloaded right now. And principals as well, because principals are the ones that figure out who are the close contacts, and now they have to call, you know, 5 to 10 families per child.
Can I make a quick comment? This board makes a lot of good decisions. One of the best recent decisions I think that you've made is back in June, we were looking at COVID was on a downturn. The Delta variant wasn't impacting kids the way that it has. But we were kind of thinking, we had a health and safety coordinator that stayed our bacon last year, but we really need this for next year. Maybe we can shift those duties back to administrators of schools and whatnot. And on the district administrative team level, it felt like that we don't know exactly what's going to happen with COVID. We need to keep kids safe. We need to keep kids in school. So let's go to the board and ask if we can extend this for another year. And there's some discussion about that, and you all voted unanimously to continue it. Man, that was a good decision. We would be in trouble. Marty knows because she's been living it for the last week. We would be
I was
in
like, I
trouble
did not know how much
without
Alexa
that
did.
position that you voted for and approved. And the fact that neighboring districts are following our lead that way is another great underscore to what a great decision that was. And I'll say as well, we should have the right person in that position. That is a sharp young lady who has gotten her arms around all the aspects of this and has worked with experts and found out what really needs to be done to, first and foremost, keep kids in school where we possibly can, but also keep kids safe. And those two things dovetail a lot. As long as parents will help us out and not send sick kids to school and not, recommend COVID parties at their house or other things that are ridiculous.
I think on top of that is just putting the plan together with that group,
Yeah.
that Alexa led over the summer. I think that,
Yeah.
while no plan is perfect, granted, but it gives us a framework. And it gives us something to say, we worked on this and put this in place, and we're seeing hopefully that we're trying to control some of the spread, you
Yeah.
know, and not, I think that was a key piece, keeping the health and safety coordinator and putting that plan in place and having medical experts as an outside committee working with us helps a lot.
So from a state perspective, I was at Arizona School Administrators Monday morning down in the valley. And a lot of those superintendents have that same blank stare that you often see me have. And every speaker that spoke said, we thought this was going to be over by now, but it's not. So I just want to share that we are not alone by any means. I mean, the story's almost the same in every public school district you talk to, including protests, board meetings maybe not going as great as you'd like them to go, and you know, public coming in and maybe having to be removed from meetings. We've been blessed that that tough board meeting we had about masks, our community was excellent in that board meeting. Maybe the ones that weren't happy the next day marched around town and did whatever, but we're not the only school district that has had to deal with that. So, and in terms of cases and that type of thing, we're seeing it pretty proportionate. In terms of quarantining, you'll see probably real data and research on this later. I can tell you that it's very clear to me that if you're not quarantining, you're in a big hurt, and you're looking at closing school down, and you're looking at those types of things. So, or you're going to start quarantining tomorrow if you're not. So, anyway, we're not making this stuff up, and we're sharing it with lots of other people, and we are all in the same boat of we can't wait till we're past this, and we will be.
Anybody have questions or comments?
No, I have one comment. I think it's great that we reduced the quarantining to anybody who's had COVID in the past. That's excellent. I personally would like to see it, if they go and get that antibody test and they have the antibodies, that we extend it to those. You know, they might not have ever been tested positive, but they have the antibodies that they also
Well,
be
we
excluded,
just,
but-
that's interesting you brought it up. We just got an antibody test from a parent, and she really had no documentation at all of previous COVID. And she said, I'll go get an antibody test. And so she did and submitted it, and I looked at it and I'm like, I don't know what this means. So I can't tell even if there are antibodies. That's the weirdest report I've ever seen. So I have someone medical looking at it, because if she has antibodies, then that means she had COVID, and likely she's protected.
Well, as much as
so-
anybody, you know,
Yeah.
vaccinated people are still getting
Yeah.
it, you know.
So we're just trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to interpret it so we can bring her back.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're looking at that option for
Mhm.
parents.
Mhm.
Excellent.
I mean,
Thank
it's
you.
the same as saying we had
Got it.
COVID.
Yeah.
So,
We're
Yeah.
trying in
Thank
every
you.
way to help people not have to quarantine. It's not a perfect science, but we're also trying in every way to not let this thing spread more than it already is, because then we won't have the capacity to do our work. But right now, we're holding our own.
and then we've also kind of prioritized, because when the high school gets 5 positives in one morning, I mean, they're at 5 already. Literally, they just don't have the capacity to find every close contact. So we've helped them prioritize. So if they're sitting at a table, face to face, those kiddos need to be quarantined rather than ones that are sitting behind you, you know, or in front of you. You know, we can try to really look at proximity, really get the close ones, ask them who they eat lunch with, who do they hang out with, because we are seeing friends of friends they really are getting it. We also prioritize staff. If a teacher becomes positive, and we are having breakthrough a little bit, then they're typically above the children, and their particles are going down. So it's adults transmit to students more than little guys to adults. So we do prioritize teachers. We're really trying to limit that range. Like, I was talking to a teacher last night. She's like, well, I'm around the room all day. And I'm like, I know, but we're really talking about you need kind of a lot of that viral load to get it. So just walking by someone or stopping and pointing out something is probably not going to do it. So we are trying to prioritize.
Excellent, you're doing a great job. Any thoughts about maybe improving the air conditioning ventilation systems in any of the schools with some of the COVID money to put in something things that
HIPAA
filter
filters or
H-vac.
something?
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely, last year took a look at all of our systems, and we have our systems as they exist, operating the best that they can with that stuff. Alexa could probably speak to it better than I can, but yeah, Brian, we also have some contacts too that we could look into, and I'd love to see what they could do further.
Yeah, for our existing, like Joe said, it's, they're operating at the best capacity. We have two actual
Any
experts,
thoughts about
HVAC.
replacing some of them, or that are
They're-
older, or good,
Yeah,
good time to replace air conditioning systems,
Right.
we got some money.
I submitted 96 HVAC units to the school facilities board, saying we want them replaced. We'll see where that goes, because the capacity for that external air recycling, I think, is 12 or 10%, I think 10%. All the filters have been changed prior to the first day of school. So within the capacity of the units themselves, they're as optimal. And so, like I said, the school facilities board liaison said, what are your needs this year? And I gave her 96
So would that be
HVACs.
something the principals could say and send to you for COVID monies? That didn't count right, but.
It could be on the list when it comes to the capital plan of what we're looking for usage of ESSER. It'd be great if the school facilities board
Would do it instead.
would do that, because it's their money being used rather than our limited pool of money that we have for COVID relief funds. So I can keep you guys updated. I sent it and I didn't get a response.
Well, they typically don't replace your air conditioner until it fails from the school facility board.
They do, and one thing that we do have in our favor is we do have these two experts, and they are keeping units going to the extent that if they weren't with us, they would be at that point. And I've communicated that, that we are MacGyvering our HVACs to the point where in a typical situation, we'd be without heat or air because they're not repairable and just to the normal facilities person.
So at
that
the
has
end of
been
the year, we can't like stick a screwdriver in the fan and just kill them?
I was kind of thinking this, like,
We have documentation of everything that we've done to keep these going, and they have a specific flow chart of how to get your HVACs replaced. And like I said, 96 of them
Okay. So
fit
if that
that flow chart.
doesn't work, could we do it with the ESSER money or not? You said we could?
We could.
If the principals did it?
It's a for a 3-ton unit, it's probably 10 grand, and we have 300 of them, so, to do them all, it's, $4 million plus.
Yeah, it's something to talk about, but I don't know that we want to spend all of that on ACs, but Brian, I'd like to get some of those companies up here to come and give us some estimates of what they could do there, because there's some retro things they can do also to.
And Brian, is that a quick fix? Let's say we had $4 million drop in our lab tomorrow. We said, we want to use this to replace
No.
air conditioning units. When would that likely be?
No,
During
HVACs
the
are actually
current
going
wave of
through a
COVID?
conversion from certain specs to now that's no longer legal. And so everyone's trying to get these new ones, and so not only is there a short supply of these new units, that because as you replace, you can't replace, but also the parts for the old units are getting hard, because you can't get the new ones, and then your old ones break, and everyone wants those parts to fit, so it is not. I mean, if they said, yeah, we're gonna replace all 96, we'll be lucky if that happened by fall of 2022.
So this is not a quick fix.
Absolutely
It's a
not.
great idea on paper, but even if we had the money yesterday, we'd be looking at months and months and months from now.
Yeah, the demand, and it was the worst time to have this conversion issue, because the demand for HVAC parts and the new units are just, there's a supply does not match the demand.
Other questions or comments? Okay, last item on the agenda is any future agenda items anybody knows of right now? Okay. We're done.
You didn't give us very much time to think.
Well, you can,